the SEC sued Tai Lopez for basically securities fraud. But all the headlines are saying it's a $112 million Ponzi scheme. I was charged by the same prosecutor for a $171 million Ponzi scheme, and I report to prison on October 9th.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good. Let's talk about your case first, and then we'll get to Ty's case.
The housing values were crashing to the floor, as you recall, in 09, 010. That no one was there to buy those assets. But I knew that there was a generation of people coming that would need the assets. And also, the housing starts had dropped to almost zero. So there was no new inventory coming online for 2012 and 15 and 2017 because they weren't pulling permits the years earlier. So I knew that if I could get as many of those houses as possible, I could win. And so I put all that together, and by 2009 or 10-ish, I was like, yeah, what would be great is if I had a fund to go buy a bunch of distressed assets and keep them.
Right, sit on them till the market changes.
This has got to be the best thing. And I ran across a mutual friend, and the conversation went something like, well, why aren't you at the courthouse? I'm like, well, why would I go to the courthouse? What are you talking about? He's like, well, that's where all the foreclosures are. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And he's like, well, I'm down there four days a week. Just come down there. I'm like, okay. So I go down to, I think it was 7th Avenue is the name of the street, but it's one little courthouse, and it's the size of this suite at the time. And it had all the foreclosures for the entire state of Nevada was in that one place. And so we would buy like a condo. Let's say the condo had sold for $250,000, which was really a lot of money back then. And now it was, going on the market for, 30, and it gets bid up to 50. And so you buy it, you put some cheap carpet and paint on it, and you sell it right back off. You just get rid of it as soon as you can. So I really started working on that, and just about as soon as I got going on that, which was roughly around 2010, 2011, it started instantly drying up. People from LA were showing up at the auction to buy cheap houses.
Right.
You can't forget Southern California is I think even today it's like the 7th largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
So when any part of that population wakes up and says they want to buy something, it's kind of over. So I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, man, I could do this anywhere. And so I did some research and I recalled the days of doing loans here. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not the same. The situation is different in Nevada or in the West Coast than the East Coast. The West Coast has what's called a trustee auction. So foreclosures work a lot like a car in a practical sense. Mm-hmm. If you simply miss 3 mortgage payments, the bank can come take your house or make all the moves to come take your house. Whereas on the East Coast here, you've got the legal situation where everything has to go in front of a judge in some way or another.
Right.
So I did some research and I realized the whole East Coast is years behind the West Coast because every foreclosure's got to get in front of a judge, right? So, and then I realized we could go back. I realized I could do this anywhere as long as I moved to the East Coast and as long as I kept doing this. And so I mentioned it to my wife one day. I was like, we could do this from Tampa. And she's like, I want to go back. Because we lived here for a little while in Tampa in the early 2000s when I had the branch out here for the lending side.
Right.
I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And she just loved Tampa. So yeah, we packed up roughly around 2011. I think we were here by 2012, moved back to Tampa. And I did exactly that. I found some people that So it's interesting. In my search to try to get into foreclosures here, I was pretty much closed out of every place. The banks really controlled a lot of it, and there wasn't like a public auction like it was in Vegas. And so one of the groups I ran across, they specialized in tax deeds, and I was hardly interested. I was like, well, I'm not really interested in buying up somebody else's taxes. I'm interested in the property. And so I did a couple of deals with them on the tax deeds. If you buy the tax that somebody doesn't pay, you get a yield on it, I think 12% or something like that, and then they pay it off, you get your money back. And so
you could eventually take the house, though, if you wanted, right? Like if you wait long enough, you buy enough years in a row or something like that?
Well, yeah, so it's all about if they redeem it or not. If they redeem it, you don't...
you just get your interest.
You just get your money back, yeah. So, and I was, of course, talking to everybody, all my other friends back on the West Coast, and we'd formed a fund, and I had met my attorney there in Las Vegas, and he, top attorney. So my attorney he went to Pepperdine, he went to Oxford. I met him at a company called Dwayne Morris.
Have you ever Googled your name? With one quick search, I can find all of your information on very sketchy websites. Your phone number, your old addresses. Want to know how scammers get your information? This is it. And that's why today's video is sponsored by Aura. There are companies called data brokers that take your personal information without asking and sell it to anyone, marketers, scammers, even stalkers. That's why your phone blows up with spam and weird texts. And if you want to get your information removed, they make it really hard on purpose. But Aura does this for you automatically, and they keep it off. Aura is not just for data removal. It helps me protect my whole digital life. They also give you a VPN to keep your internet private, a password manager to keep your login safe, antivirus software to stop hackers, data broker removal so companies stop selling your information, and $5 million in identity theft insurance just in case. It's like locking every door in your digital house. Go to aura.com/Matt to try Aura for free for 14 days. You'll see exactly where your information is being sold. I'm not leaving myself wide open. You shouldn't either. Once again, that's aura.com/Matt for a free 14-day trial.
This is like a white shoe law firm. They were in the Wells Fargo Gleaming Glass building. And they had created all my documentation for me to raise money to go buy foreclosures. And so I came out, I used that to come out to Florida. And so in my conversations with the tax deed guys, they're like, well, you can just buy the houses at the tax deed auction. You can just skip this process. Well, let's do that. I don't want to do this anymore. So they showed me how to go to the tax deed auction to bid and buy properties. And what I discovered pretty quickly was if you weren't paying them enough money, you weren't getting the good houses. So as soon as I could, I started doing it myself, which was it was challenging insofar as you had to do all the title work yourself. There's no title insurance policy. So buying a tax deed property from the auction in the world of auctions is like the hardest thing to do, because it comes with no title insurance. It's all cash, and the commitment's 100%, and you're not supposed to see the property before you buy it unless it's vacant. So, but it's got the biggest spread. We were buying houses for $10,000, $30,000. These are the same houses that are $500,000 today.
Right.
So that's where you want. That's kind of where you wanted to be for the most spread anyway. So it's kind of interesting how the market forced me to be in that spot, but it's where that's where the biggest spread is. So that's what we did. We started buying up all the tax deed properties, and we raised capital, I'm not sure how much more I can say about that right now because I think we're butting up against my SEC gag order right now. So anyway.
So you did that for a while.
Did that for a while, right? And so that was really fun. And we did other cool projects. Started open up a couple of breweries we financed.
So this is becoming lucrative.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We bought the oldest house in Tampa, over in Ybor.
Yeah.
And we'd already bought a lot in the South Tampa area that was already in the historic district. And so we bought the house. I think we bought the house for $50,000, and we moved it for like $214,000 over to this lot, which instantly made it protected. Because where the oldest house was previously was not protected.
Okay.
Yeah, you need so many houses on the street to make it a protected street, and there wasn't the houses there for it to do that. So it was just kind of languishing there. And that was a lot of fun. It was the longest move ever of a house in Tampa. So it was pretty cool. If you had pictures here, I'd show you. We had a picture of us going by Emily Arena. So, but going back to 2013, we were audited by the state of Arizona because we were raising almost all of our money out of Arizona. I had my friend running a sales group there, raising capital. And essentially what you do is take our packages into family offices and people that manage money and say, hey, do you have a real estate investment? Yes or no. And if they did, then it was usually a pass, right? You don't need another one. But if they didn't, they were interested, you leave the package and we'd raise capital that way.
What are you raising every month? Like how much money are you raising and you're putting into these houses? Like we were going through a couple $1 million a month.
No, it was a lot. Like I think I raised about $100 million within 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So Yeah. So I have to be careful what I say. So
Right.
my gag order is really interesting. You can't confirm anything and you can't deny anything. So anyway, so we got to be a pretty sizable operation, as an upstart company. And so I knew the SEC was looking at us in mid 2019 or 18, I think. And I was just largely unconcerned about it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I got the best attorneys on the planet Earth.
Right.
My guy that I had followed from Dwayne Morris went on to Fox Rothschild. And we were always expanding and always growing. So we'd open up new products. And I think it was by the time we got to DLA Piper, which is one of the largest law firms on earth, we had opened up the QOZ fund and the REIT, which was going to be our transition away from the funds into a product we could eventually take public, was the idea. So yeah, it was a pretty sizable enterprise. We were doing a lot of things, and yeah, it was pretty cool. We were living a great lifestyle. We'd ridden the wave, up, so to say. And I certainly had all the things that the newspaper articles talk about. I'd always been into collecting watches. So over the decade before, I had been buying, selling, flipping watches, and I built it up to a pretty sizable portfolio. And I had really good connections with, some of the manufacturers like Audemars Piguet and Patek Philippe. So it was a really, really cool experience. I actually flew to Switzerland and got to tour the Patek factory. I went to Basel World a couple of times to see the new watch releases. So the watches that I bought, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that's one of the things I think I can talk about, is the watches I bought. I think over the years, I'd bought between $4 to $6 million worth of watches by flipping my way up and buying retail. And some of them had 10x in value. They'd shot through the roof. Some of these watches are super rare, like one of the first 13 FP Journes ever made. So yeah, I had that going on. I was into cars as well, and even in 2019, we flew to the Geneva Car Show, and the place I was buying my cars from got us into the Geneva auction or the Geneva Car Show like the day before, like on press day. So we got to walk around the whole Geneva Car Show, and this is like when the Speedtail came out from McLaren. You ever seen this car?
No.
It's wild.
I think is this the one that's in the newspaper article you sent me?
No.
Okay.
So this car I don't think is legal in America, but it's the wildest thing. It's like this hypercar, and the back fin literally moves up and down, and the metal doesn't have a crease in it. Yeah, so I was there for 5 minutes just staring at that, watching the little thing go up and down. I've never seen that before. But it was a pretty amazing environment, right? The best cars on the planet, and I'm walking around there, and my guy says, "Hey, are you familiar with Paganis?" I'm like, I'd heard of them before, but I wasn't really impressed by them. To me, they're like a kit car, essentially. Got an AMG V12 and a custom coachmaker, right? So I went up there, and we were walking around, and my wife and I, we were talking to them for a while. Really nice people. Met Mr. Pagani, and I don't think his kids were there at that time. But yeah, we were hanging out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, this car is for sale." And it's usually a waiting list, right? You have to custom order them and do all that stuff. And so this one was spec'd out by Mr. Pagani. So it was pretty nice. It was a very, very beautiful car. So, and when on the flight back home, of course, the guy's calling me, "Hey, do you want to take it?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't know, man. I gotta figure some things out. I'll have to move some things around or whatever." But yeah, I'm interested, right? So I get back, and I decide that if I sell off a bunch of cars that I have, and I move some things around, I can make this work. And so I'd also gotten a call from.
Well, how much is the car?
Well, so the car was 2.4, I think, roughly. Yeah. But here's the thing I think might be interesting for people. Buying a $2.4 million car is not as big a deal as you might think it is.
Okay.
Let me help you with this.
Please tell me how that
Let me help
works.
you with this. So if you're in your late 40s and you've taken all these risks and you've built companies and maybe one of them's taken off and been successful, you have some money, right? Okay. But you don't need all that money. So all you have to do is find $1 million somewhere in your life. Somewhere in your life, if you've accumulated $1 million There you go. And you've got asset base that are cash flowing, right? So you put $1 million down on the car, and the leasing company, you can lease it, and the payment's like 15 grand a month, which is a lot of money. But if you've got an empire you've built with 350 units, it's doable, right? So. So that's one of the things I like to share with people. I mean, people are all amazed you bought a $2.4 million car. It's like, well, did you pay cash for your Mercedes? Did you pay cash for your Toyota? Nobody does that.
I
Yeah.
have a 2007 FJ, Toyota FJ. So
Well, today, so one picture on my website has got my Ford Fiesta. Right next to the Pagani.
Right.
It's all part of the same story. But I'm highly upgraded right now. I have a 2014 Lexus.
Nice.
So I'm
nice.
it's within a decade. So I'm very excited. You want to buy it? I'm going to prison. So I don't need it anymore. I've kept it up really well. So there was all that going on for sure. It was a wonderful lifestyle, and it is what it is. And so the SEC really got interested in me in 2019. They finally sent me a letter saying, "Hey, we're doing opening up an inquiry. We'd like to have your records and whatever." And so I took a copy of the letter and I sent it over to Paul, my attorney, and I gave it to my CPA, and I said,
were you at all
do it.
concerned?
Not in the slightest, bro. Yeah, so that's just the dumbest part about all of this. I should have been way more paranoid, way more, any of those words that make you more concerned about the federal government being interested in your life. So they dealt with it for maybe 6 months or so, and I was pretty much disconnected. I'm running the business, going on vacations, living life, and then finally around late 2019. I realized that they were asking for more stuff and asking weird questions. Like, I think they asked like they wanted employees' addresses and home phone numbers and all this other stuff. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like we're, doing a standard, what's going on in your business and are you compliant with securities laws? And so I remember talking to all my attorneys. And so the interesting thing about having your business at a large law firm is I call it getting passed around. So let me give you an example. So when we were opening up all these new entities, like in 2014, 15, 16, Paul would say, we'd have a conversation about, let's say, the REIT. A REIT is a really interesting investment vehicle because it's really well understood by Wall Street and everybody else. But there's very specific guidelines to it. In a technical sense, a REIT is completely governed by Treasury. What makes a REIT are tax laws, not really securities laws. But so we talked about transitioning over to a REIT so I could raise more capital because the funds are kind of limited. Unless you're BlackRock or somebody, in my experience, once you hit about 150 million, you're kind of capped out on the fund thing. It's not a very efficient tool. So when he talked me into that, and I agreed, of course, but he would pass me around to everybody in the firm that, this guy's he's a REIT expert, and this one over here is a REIT tax expert, and this one over here is a REIT guideline or securities expert as well. And so on all these emails, I have like 5 different attorneys at, like, let's say DLA Piper, all building out my investment vehicle, right? And so all this time, you always had more than one person reviewing your stuff.
Right.
And I say this because, people have always asked me, well, do I blame my attorneys for where I'm at? No, I don't think so. I think everybody had a chance to look at everything, and it is what it is. It's not like 1 or 2 guys, made a decision about everything. So we had a new group of people come in late 19 to review the documents and everything from the legal side and work with the SEC. And I remember talking to Paul one time. I was like, do I need to like disclose this to my investors? Like, is this a thing? And can I just talk to them? And all the attorneys, of course, are, no, you cannot just talk to the government. I'm like, okay. So oddly enough, just a couple months later, the SEC wanted an interview with myself and our staff CPA.
What is their concern?
I don't know at this point. I don't know. So they're gathering everything from the Phoenix area, all the marketing materials, and then they're gathering everything from us. And it's interesting. They made like certain requests, like asking for. I remember one day they asked for work product. I'm like, well, what is work product? Like, so I talked to my attorneys and like, well, it's just whatever you're working on. It's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, we look at properties, people offer us deals, we analyze them, we decide yes or no. And they're like, well, yeah, do you have an Excel spreadsheet with all the stuff you're working on? I'm like, well, for sure. We got all kinds of Excel spreadsheets from all the years of how we correlate things. And so we gave them that information, for example, here you go. This is what it looks like inside, So they subpoenaed myself and my CPA to go in for an interview December 5th of 19, I think it was. And we voluntarily went down there, spent the whole day in the interview. And coming out of that, I realized I was even more confused and it was nothing like I thought it was. So when I went in there, I really brushed up the week before I worked with my attorneys, like how to answer questions appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Like how we're speaking right now would never fly, right? It's very black and white and
Right.
And then also all the properties, like the valuations, where everything was, and the entities that had what. So I filled my head with all this stuff going into this interview. We flew down to Miami for it, and the whole interview was just simply, is this your marketing paperwork? Is this your PPM? Who is this person? And so it was after 8 hours of that, I was like, I don't know what we're doing here. They asked me like 4 real estate questions in 8 hours, I think it was.
So I have a question. Have investors been losing money?
Nope.
Have investors been complaining that they were misled?
Not that I know of. Nope. I had no lawsuits, no complaints, no issues, no nothing.
So how did the SEC even decide we need to look at this?
I don't know.
Okay.
I suspect, so going back to 2013, the reason why the state of Arizona pulled us up is that, and we believe that the reason is other people that were selling like real estate products didn't like the idea that a Vegas, Florida company was offering real estate deals and kind of pulling money away from their local deals. Okay. So we think we got turned in by somebody. Said, hey, we got a guy from out of state offering securities from something in Florida. It doesn't sound legit to us.
Right.
Okay, so that did that whole investigation, and then and how an investigation goes away is it just dies. They don't give you.
They don't find enough to prosecute you for anything. You haven't done anything. It just goes away.
Right, totally. So it just went away.
I was going to say sometimes, and I don't want to mention the company, but I know of a company where they're offering a product in a state, and the state feels like it's okay. There are other products. It's questionable, but they're making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll go in and start an investigation and basically drum up some possible charges. And this is a specific kind. I'll tell you off screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the district attorney for that state, let's say it's a national company, will go to them and say, look, just pay a fine and we'll quash this whole thing. And it's like, we're selling this in 50 other states.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever had a problem with what we're doing.
Yeah.
You guys are now investigating us. If we've done something, and they came back and they said, if we've done something wrong, charge us and we'll go to court. And it's not like criminal, but it's civil. And they're saying, we'll go to court and because people don't understand, like states can come in and charge a company with violations where it's not criminal, but they're saying, and they'll try and get some kind of a verdict where they can get a bunch of money from that company, and maybe they pay victims. So that's why sometimes suddenly AT&T, you're being told, hey, AT&T has this massive lawsuit was filed by the state of Florida. The AT&T has to pay this much money, and you may be eligible to get some of that money if you had bought a phone from one of these locations, whatever, that type of thing. But what people don't realize is a lot of times that money the fines and things just go to the state.
Yeah.
And so this company I'm thinking of, the state attorney goes to them and says, just pay a fine. Like, give us a fine. And they're like, no. and they're expecting them to say, okay, how much is the fine? But this company's like, we're not doing anything wrong. And we'd rather just pay our lawyers because they're thinking to themselves, we'd rather get a verdict that says you're absolutely wrong to let all the other states, because if we pay a fine to you, these other states might start coming in and saying they want to, they want us to pay fines to them, and we're not doing anything wrong. So in my mind, and I didn't, until I was a part of this whole thing, I didn't really realize that was a thing.
100%. So we ran into that a little bit. We were pulled up arbitrarily, let's call it once every 6 months by some state.
Right.
Like, I think Michigan had sent us a letter. I want to say like Indiana did.
You would provide them what they want, and then they just go away.
I was much lazier than that, Matt. I would just get the letter and be like, whoosh, right over to legal, and I thought not about it. Like, so all the states individually have an agenda, and they think they're protecting their people.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the federal agencies. And so, the layers that you have to protect yourself from are so vast. I never understood the vastness of it at the time. And you don't know until you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you only know the hard way, because your attorney never can prepare you for everything. They give you the paperwork and they say, yeah, this is the framework and this is what we agree on. But if anybody of the 50 states or any one of the three-letter agencies doesn't agree with it, it's dead, just instantly. So in December, I think it was December 5th, 2019, my CPA and I went to Miami for formal depositions, 8 hours. There's three SEC attorneys, SEC accountant, myself, my 2 SEC specialist attorneys. In fact, one of them was an ex-U.S. attorney, all from DLA, And we're sitting at a table like this size and what I think of as a closet. It's like a super small room. And then you got the little court lady, keeping track of everything. So 8 hours of just showing me documents, most of them I'd never seen before. All of it was like marketing materials.
Right.
And I'm largely a hands-off, I'm not a micromanager guy.
Right.
So whenever we had to do marketing, it always had to be approved through legal. But I would see the emails. I was CC'd on everything. And I would see the emails. Okay, there's Barry talking to Paul about marketing, and Barry likes it, doesn't like it, or wants this, and they're going back and forth. And I would just, look at my phone sometimes, see the conversation, and then, move on. I trusted him explicitly, and he's my best friend at the time. And I'd met him in early 2000 at one of the loan shops in Phoenix. So he'd already been my friend for, over 15 years. So, and that's just how I handled it. And so they're showing me all these documents and all this paperwork, and I'm just, I want to answer questions, because the idea in my mind, very, very naive, I'm thinking if I show up there, I can tell them anything about my business and it'll be great.
Right.
We'll get through this and we'll wrap it all up, and this will be done going into 2020. And no. So after a whole day, I just emotionally and mentally being hammered by attorneys, I left that, and I caught a call from Barry, and he's like, well, how did it go? And I'm like, man, I'm just so confused by it all. They're just showing me paperwork and everything. I just, stuff I didn't know and I don't think is relevant, and it's just weird. So a couple weeks later, I really kind of gotten with my attorneys to try to say, listen, can we do another one, or can I tell them about the real estate? I want them to feel good about the business if they're concerned about even the marketing stuff, because that really was the focus, was all about the marketing materials. And so the attorneys were going back and forth in December with the SEC. And finally, in the last week of December, they said, yeah, they want you to sign a tolling agreement. I'd never heard of this document before, but this is a document the attorneys give you to basically give themselves an extension on you.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So
they want an extension on the statute of limitations on when they can charge you. No.
Right.
You got enough. That means they're already thinking about charging you. They can charge me now.
Well, so I asked my attorneys, like, what if I don't sign this? Well, and that's what they said. Well, they'll just charge you now. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Well, with what?
Yeah, they probably don't have enough
me?
to charge you with. That's why they're asking for more time to gather more evidence to put something together to go in front of a grand jury. They don't feel at this point, they don't feel they have enough that they can go in front of a grand jury. Great. So no.
I don't think the SEC does grand juries because it's civil.
They do something.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough time to do something. They didn't have enough time to gather enough to do something, or they would have charged you already. They were saying, hey, can you give us more time to gather information to charge you? No. Charge me with what you got. Well, if you can.
Well, I decided to sign it. And my thought process was this, and
I haven't
am
done anything wrong.
I haven't. Well, no, but I'm also responsible for a lot of other people's money.
Right.
You know, and throwing myself in an adversarial position with the government was never my idea, right? So I just came to a decision that, you know, at the end of the day, they are the regulating body, and, you know, here we are. So if they're going to charge me later, they're going to charge me now. I'd rather them do it later and do it strategically, or maybe we can work something out with a fine, whatever we've done wrong. At this point, I don't think we've done anything wrong. So so I signed the tolling agreement like in the very last week of December of 19.
Oh, you still think
Yeah.
the government's your friend?
No,
No.
but
You
apparently,
still think
yeah.
they're looking out for you.
Santa Claus is
That's
real.
so cute.
So
You
yeah,
watch too much Law and Order.
I have been socialized. Yes. So we went through the Christmas break, and you know the attorneys kind of pick it up in January, whatever. So I had to pick and choose what I can say here now because it's going to get close. So February 14th was the day the U.S. Marshals and the law firm took over the office. They had in hand the lawsuit from the federal government, the SEC, against us, and the order to seize all the assets of the companies and all my personal assets, minus two entities, the QOZ and the REIT, interestingly enough. And so, but I wasn't processing all that at the time. You know, I literally came back into the office around 9 or 10 o'clock from an early morning dentist appointment, and, you know, my office is being overrun by people. So I immediately call my law firm, DLA Piper, and they send over a person right away. And she's there. She talks to this guy who's calling himself the receiver, and all of his attorneys running around. And basically, after a few minutes, she's like, she reads the paperwork or whatever, and she talks to my attorneys on the phone, and that I'm used to working with inside of DLA. And
This is civil?
yes,
This is a civil, they came in
yeah.
and started seizing things on a civil case.
It gets better. So I've been working with them for a year, right? I just a little over a month before had gone in for a deposition, fully complying with them in every respect, gave them all the paperwork. And they had an ex parte meeting with the judge. And in I estimate about 40 minutes. I've read the transcripts a million times. I estimate it took about 40 minutes for her to approve seizing all of my life, all of it, except for the REIT and the QOZ, which is just, I don't know why they didn't include that. So, yeah, and they just took over the building, all the bank accounts, everything. And so that happened, like I said, February 14th, 2020. In retrospect, you know, we've had time to rebuild all the situation. The internet went out the day before. And one of my ex-employees always brings that up to me. He says, "Don't you remember the internet going out the day before? Man, we had the best equipment in that building.
Mm-hmm.
Why would it go out?" And the guy couldn't figure it out. And so they now think that was them, you know, tapping into the building and so forth. And then, you know, thinking back, mid January, late January, Tony and I, my number one guy, we would walk out of the building usually at night together, pretty late, from working on stuff. And I remember standing out in front of the building a couple times. We'd locked it up, but we were just finishing our conversation in front of the cars, and looking across the street and seeing a Dodge sitting there, like a cop car, just like sitting there in the nail salon place, like no other cars, all by itself. And that went on for like 3 or 4 days, and we would laugh about it. Like, oh, you know, somebody's, you know, leaving their car there, whatever. We'd make jokes about it. So later I would find out by the billing cycle and the transcripts that the SEC was already working with the law firm to seize the company, even before they talked to the judge. So the receivership had already hired private investigators to track us and follow us around and learn our movements before they even got to the judge. So they knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah.
Okay, so you come in, there's lawyers everywhere
Lawyers everywhere. Yep.
coming in, which to me makes me think of like FBI agents, that like they're everywhere, seat grabbing the computers or.
Yeah. So they seized everything. Like my personal computer, I did everything on, was there at the office. Yeah, they seized everything that I
I mean,
think
what
of.
are you shocked? Like, what's going on? You
Totally.
don't say like you did anybody say this is something that could happen?
Nope.
This is coming?
Nope. Everybody was just shocked. So,
What do your lawyers say when you tell them?
Well, they have to confer. They have to figure out what's going on. They're scrambling as well. So I'm given the document, and I can barely read it because everybody's just it's surreal. It's just shocking. Like, everybody's interviewing. All these attorneys are just interviewing every employee in there, going through the computers and everything. And I'm just like, what is going on? So we have like a little sitting area in the main area. I remember sitting there with Tony, and Tony and I were like, they were not interviewing us. They did not want to talk to us. And so I just sat there and I was like, I'm not even sure what to do right now. Like, I can't interfere. They're federal agents. And I asked one of the employees, I'm like, how did they even get in? And they're like, oh, they showed up with U.S. Marshals. And the U.S. Marshals were here, and the attorneys just told them it was safe enough that they could leave. So I don't know if any FBI agents were there that day or not, but definitely, from what I'm told, the marshals are what helped them secure the building and just take it over. So yeah, that the lawyer came over from DLA Piper, the office here in Tampa, and there's nothing for her to do. There's nothing. She had a federal court order. Everybody's just trying to figure out what's going on. They're like, yeah, stay out of their way, don't interfere. So I was there for maybe a couple of hours, and I was like, I just don't even know what else to do. So I went home. And I just waited for the attorneys to call me back. And that's really what started all the phone calls with the attorneys. And so I can't remember what happened next. I remember.
And you can't say what it was in the promotional or marketing material that got them so upset that they decided they wanted to come in and seize everything.
Nope.
You can't say anything about that.
Nope.
Because that's all part of the gag order with the SEC.
Correct.
Just want to make that clear.
Yep. Which is really disheartening for me because, in my entrepreneurial journey, I loved the community of entrepreneurs. Like, for example, I was a member of the EO chapter in Las Vegas and in Tampa, and for a little while, I was their president. And EO is a really fantastic organization, entrepreneurial organization, and I credit them with partially building me. For example, like, let me flash back here a little bit, okay? So, EO has events. So you get to join EO, and once you join EO, they have events like regional events, global events, whatever. And when you go to those events, they have speakers like business people that have written books on stuff. And I'll never forget this. One of the regional events I went to in EO really changed my life because, when I came out of the 90s and early 2000s, I knew the mistakes I had made in business, and I wanted to make sure they didn't happen. So I was I'm not a micromanager by design, but like I tried to be more involved with everything in the business, right? I just wanted to know what everybody was doing to make sure it was done right. And I'll never forget this. I walked into one of the training seminars. A guy wrote a book called Turn This Ship Around. And I wasn't really interested in listening to him because he was ex-military, and my father was military, and he and I don't talk much. So anyway, I went in and I sat there. I was like, well, this is going to be horrible. And he told the story how he was the captain of the lowest performing naval submarine, and he turned it around, right? And this is a story about management success in the military on this naval sub. And he basically talked about this concept called the water line. And it was an idea that any decision, the water line on a ship is, where the water gets in this hole, right? So if there's a hole above, you're not dying, you're not sinking the ship. Hole below, you're dying, right? So the concept was just draw a line on a piece of paper of all the tasks in your business and your people that you have. And it's a longer explanation, but basically get rid of all the decision-making and the jobs that are above the water line. So that is really how I came to a place where I was able to expand as much as I did because I hired people. We came up with manuals, procedures, and guidelines, but also the decision making. I gave them a lot of autonomy because as long as it was above the water line, so to say. I've always been involved with entrepreneurs, and so it's always been my tribe, so to say. All my friends were business owners, small business owners in town. Lots of events, lots of things to go to, and here I am. I've had these wild experiences in my life. And I can't share them with anybody. I can't warn anybody publicly about, hey, this is what I've learned, and this is how you can help yourself.
Right.
So that part about the gag order is got to be one of the most frustrating pieces of it for me, because I can't even share how to protect yourself or what I've learned to the community, right?
And why, really quickly, why is that gag order in place? Like, what is the definition, or why?
This is one of my favorite questions. So I learned this. The gag order is in place because it's a tool used by the SEC. So this is kind of a longer discussion, but the gag order in and of itself was created in 1972. It's just they call it a housekeeping rule. It wasn't voted on by Congress. Nobody got it approved. It just showed up on their regulations one year. And as my receiver said in my sentencing, I was there in the 1970s when they implemented it, so that when people walked out of the courtroom, they couldn't say, I didn't do it.
Right.
So it's simply a tool to silence the other party. It's not a tool that actually has any usefulness to the investing public. It doesn't have any real utility. So, the gag order was instituted in 1972, and the SEC usually incorporates that with any settlement that they offer you. So in my case, so I got seized on Valentine's Day 2020. The gag order wouldn't show up in my life until about a year later. So I got seized, and I'm sitting at home. The attorneys are trying to figure things out and trying to unwind this thing and explain it. Because there are other choices you can do if you're a regulator. You can put a company under a monitorship. You can give them guidelines and rules. They didn't want to do any of that. They just wanted to seize things. So I'm at home, and I'm sitting there waiting for the attorneys to figure it out. And this is going on through the weekend. And then Sunday night, my attorneys from DLA Piper want to get on a conference call with me. Now, keep in mind, my main attorney, I've known him at this point, I think 6 or 8 years. I've moved 3 law firms with him. He's built me up from scratch. I've gone through other audits with him. So they all get me on a phone call on a Sunday night and basically tell me they can't represent me anymore because they've also represented the business entities. And so they don't represent me personally, which was really frustrating because I had asked Paul about the personal representation versus the legal representation years earlier. And as I recall, the explanation was, well, they're all single member LLCs. You're the manager, you're the shareholder, you are personally represented. And he did personally represent me in several different legal matters over the years. I got fired on that Sunday night. So when I got a chance to read that paperwork that I was given, I had 2 weeks to show up to court to answer to the charges on the SEC complaint. Right. So I'm fired. My attorneys fired me, and I have 2 weeks to go show up in federal court. And so I start calling around my other attorneys. So I had another law firm that I was working with here in Tampa, great law firm, great guys. But they're a large law firm for Florida. And I said, can you represent me? Do you have a securities division? Do you do this kind of stuff? He's like, yeah, we do, but we don't represent Ponzi guys, because that was the headline at the time, right? So I'm like, well, can you help me at all? He's like, well, let me see what I can do.
They're saying they don't want to represent a Ponzi, someone being accused of running a Ponzi scheme.
Correct. So all the high-end law firms don't have anything to do with that.
Okay.
Right? There was one guy in Miami that I called, because I'm just searching for anybody right now, calling up anybody that'll take my call. He said he would represent me for a period of like 30 to 60 days, I think it was, to get me through that first hearing or whatever was scheduled. I can't remember now. But he wanted $500,000. I'm like, well, I don't have $500,000 right now. Everything's been seized. I can't even.
What? I'll take a public defender.
Well, no. So did you know there's no public defenders for civil trials?
That's insane.
Let that sink in. Yeah. So if you're sued civilly, there's no public defender for you. There's no network. There's nothing there.
Okay.
Yeah. So there I was with all my assets frozen. My attorneys fired me, And by the way, I've got to go defend myself with against the 3-letter agency. So,
Right.
So scrambling around for that. So the Florida law firm did come through, and it was really cool. But I could tell it wasn't a good personality match, right? Working with the attorney.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a good match. And so one of my business ventures that I was involved in had an attorney in it, and they're out of New York. And he's aware of all the situation. And he says, and so I asked him, is there anybody there that can help me if I'm looking for another avenue? And he says, yeah, we just got a guy here who's actually a senior manager from the Southern District of New York, SEC. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. So I transferred law firms to him, and he gets me through, the first summer. So what happened was, in February is when the receivership took over, but about 30 days later, I realized that they hadn't taken the QOZ fund and then the REIT. And there's like 40 or so properties in these. They were new entities, but they had some stuff in them. And so the court had me responsible for those. Now, keep in mind, all of my employees are still working for the company. The receivership is running them at that time. But I can't have access to anything. No access to money, no access to records. I can't talk to them. So I had to. So I'm sitting there in my house, and I'm taking phone calls from the different property managers, and because some of the properties were up in Tennessee, some of them were. One of them I think was the brewery building. Anyway, so they had all these questions for me. Bills. I remember my roofing guy here in Tampa sent me a roof bill. I'm like, bro, I can't pay a roof bill right now. So it was pretty comical. So I had to find another accounting firm here in town, which I was referred to by my friend, that would actually do that on my behalf, which is weird. So the court had to say that this other accounting firm could take care of the accounting and deal with the assets in these other two entities on my behalf. But I could not do it. Mm-hmm. So everything went through the attorneys, and everything was approved by the court. And so I was advised by my attorneys that I shouldn't touch anything, right? Don't talk to anybody. Don't, because if they decide that I'm interfering, that'll make it worse. Okay. So we did that for a while. And then finally in the summer of 2020 is when I have my first hearing. This is the first time I get to show up, my legal side gets to show up and say anything and do anything, right? And right now COVID is just getting kicked off, right? It's a rough time. So I'm pretty excited about this because my attorneys, have read the complaint now. I've given them as many emails as I can. There's like 9,500 emails on my personal or my business email. And so we've gone through as many as we could. We came up with rebuttals and, a strategy and a plan. And the day before the hearing, the receiver dumps in like hundreds of text messages, just this data dump, like on the last, literally at 5 o'clock the night before. And my attorneys are freaking out about it. And I'm like, well, what are they doing? What is going on? It's like, yeah, they're just trying to muddy the water as much as possible. I'm like, well, what does the receiver care? What are they doing? This is my battle's with the SEC, right? The receiver is just like a neutral third party. They're supposed to be marshaling assets to protect investors. Yeah, no.
Right.
So we get to the hearing, and it's my first, like I said, my first chance to be heard. And one of the first things the judge says is, "I can't stand to read another thing." And I'm like, oh, yeah. So. Because she's just gotten too much information, too much barrage of data, and so the strategy did work to some degree. So in that hearing, she just pretty much reaffirmed everything, and yeah, it was pretty much over at that point because you can't really unwind a receivership. Once you seize a company, it severs all the contracts you've ever had, all the ties and all the financial responsibilities. They're all broken at that point. And that's on a business level, right? So on a personal level, I can tell you what happens is all of your banks fire you immediately. Like the very next week, I was getting letters from every bank I've been a part of.
They're closing accounts and mailing them any money that's in there back
to the receiver.
Right.
Not to me.
Right.
Same thing with insurance. AIG fired me right away. Anyway, so yeah, so that was the first
fired. You mean they're closing the accounts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I consider being fired.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
So then after that, it was about the money, right? So
Right.
So my father-in-law said he would lend me money to, try to, pay for the family and try to fix my situation.
Right.
And I remember telling my attorneys I have $500,000 set aside from borrowed money to deal with the legal matter, right? And they were like, yeah, $500,000 may be able to get you to trial, but a trial will be a couple $1,000,000. And I was like, oh, geez, and can I get my companies back? No, the companies are already gone, man. You got to let that go. I'm like, so I'm borrowing a few $1,000,000 to fight a legal battle that I can't even get the companies back. And what am I do? Clear my name, maybe? And so we had this conversation about what would I get out of it if I went to trial? And they're like, well, there's some concepts you need to understand. I'm like, sure, go ahead. So number one is prima facie. And we heard the SEC say this on the first hearing. Prima facie, and there's different levels of accountability. That's not what I'm looking for. There's different levels of burdens of proof. That's what I'm trying to say. There's like the highest one, as I recall, is beyond a reasonable doubt, right? That's like murder trials and so forth.
Right.
And then there's preponderance of evidence.
You're right.
There's another one.
That's typically civil.
And below that is what's called prima facie. And prima facie is a Latin term, and it literally means it looks like it. The only burden of proof the SEC has is prima facie. So that is the only level that they have to go to. But for you to win, you have to go beyond that to win.
Okay.
So the opposing side has got more horsepower than you. They've been working on the case for over a year, and their only burden of proof is prima facie. That's one concept. Second one is Section 17A. It's called strict liability. It's in all securities laws. In strict liability, there's two different pieces of it, but the most damaging one is simply means if anything has occurred at all in the company, whether you knew about it or not, whether it was a one-time thing or a part of your culture, you're guilty. So if you put prima facie on top of Section 17A, it's impossible to win a case.
Right.
That's why the Mark Cuban case is so important. He took the SEC to trial, and I think it took him a decade, and he spent about $12 million on it. And at the end, I don't think he'd ever do it again. But he's a very rare case. So we're having this conversation, right? They're introducing me these concepts. I'm like, well, how can they say the things that they said? Because I'm angry about everything right now, right? This is in 2020. And they said, well, first of all, all the prosecutors have, qualified immunity. They can say whatever they want to. SEC has prima facie and Section 17A. So you're not going to win. You're not going to win on the trial. I'm like, okay, so we're negotiating now. Yes, we're gonna do a settlement. That's the smartest thing to do. Okay, there we go. So the new strategy is we're working towards a settlement towards the last half of 2020. So my attorneys had to go to the SEC and ask me if they'd even do a settlement, because right now they're suing me, right? They're marching towards a trial. So as a big win for my attorneys, the SEC would be allowed to enter settlement negotiations, which is kind of a gift in a way. So we went down that road, and they determined that roughly, there was a certain number that they decided that I was not entitled to or was no good, and that's what they wanted back. But in the negotiations, I have to negotiate with the receiver, and I have to negotiate with the SEC to approve this settlement. And if those two parties approve it, then you give it to the judge, and the judge says if it's okay or not. So in that process, they realized I had far more assets, and they wanted it all. So that was the number. The number was number moved from like 18 to 24. It ended up at $27 million. And so that's the only number they would settle for. Otherwise, we're going to trial. And I don't have the money for trial because my assets are all frozen.
Right.
I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm young enough. I'll recover, right? So that's how you get to the road of a settlement, right? The thinking in the process. So in the settlement process, it's all about, you turning over assets. And oftentimes they'll ask for things like, a securities ban or something to that effect. And I have no securities ban whatsoever, which is, I found kind of ironic in my case. But so we're negotiating the settlement, and then they start sharing the paperwork back and forth, the attorneys. And finally, it comes down to the final part of it. And this is early 2021, I think, roughly. Can't remember now exactly. But that's when the gag order first showed up. And it's just it's just built into the document. It's not even like a certain addendum or anything. It's just built in the language of one of the pages. And I went over it with my attorneys, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is standard. This is what they always do." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean I can't talk about it?" And he's like, "Well, you just can't confirm or deny the charges publicly, And so at the time, I was like, "Well, that sounds pretty specific. Okay, whatever." And so at this time, you have so many problems in your brain, right? Mm-hmm. Your finances are screwed. You have no brand name in the public anymore. And at this time, I was learning that, and I think it was late 2020, I learned that the SEC and the receiver had contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office and were trying to get me indicted on criminal charges. So, and they had already interviewed a few of my employees in the summer of 2020. The FBI had. So now I know the FBI is involved, the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so my thinking was, well, I just need to close down damage, right? Just choose fewer battles to fight. So I signed the SEC agreement, turned over everything. I'm, financially destitute at this time. So I'm living off borrowed money from family. And, the criminal investigation is in full swing. So the FBI puts up a website dedicated to me, and they have it up for 5 years. Yeah, I have my own FBI website.
What does that say?
Looking for information. It just had a little sentence there about the things I was accused of with the SEC.
Right.
And then if you have any information, contact us. Yeah. So it's challenging to get past a second interview if you're applying for jobs when the FBI has a website.
Right.
You might be shocked to know that. So I ended up borrowing some money. My wife and family used some of that borrowed money to go buy an asset, another piece of real estate. So we're working on developing that, and during the time of 2022 or so. And so we're working away on it. Yeah, we settled with the SEC. My wife's family bought her a new house. We all live there, and that's when the gag order came into effect effectively at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you end up you settle. The SEC thing is settled. That's done. So that should be a wash, and you're trying to kind of start your life over at that point.
It doesn't work that way in this case.
Right.
So the SEC is settled, but the receivership is open, right? And some of these receiverships can run a decade. Like the guy running my receivership, he's a professional. He's worked for I think 14 years inside the SEC, and gets handed off a lot of these receiverships. So if you do any research on receiverships, you start seeing the same names over and over again. The attorneys that work at one law firm that are on a receivership are on a different receivership in Miami. It's like a little circle of people that just kind of pass them around. So the receivership is still active and alive, and one of the things they're charged with doing is investigating everything. So they're still investigating all my bank accounts. They have questions for my attorneys. They're still involved with me on the day-to-day. So I've got criminal attorneys that are trying to learn about my situation and how to deal with them from a criminal point of view, because they think it's different than the civil point of view. But I can tell you from my shoes, it's the same.
Right.
Everybody just does whatever they want to do. So I hired a couple of attorneys here in town to deal with a criminal situation, and that went on for years. And so there's all kinds of legal spatterings with the receivership. It's just an amazing dynamic. As far as a professional organization goes, it's probably one of the lowest I've ever seen. Like, for example, there were some things that I wanted to keep, like gifts that were given to me. I actually got a letter from somebody saying, yeah, I gave Brian this gift. There's no record that I ever paid or bought it. and they just wouldn't give it to us. You know, I was involved in several businesses around town and then sat on some boards. And when the receivership takes over, that's theirs now.
Right.
So they're showing up to meetings with my friends, other business owners, and saying certain things about me. It's just a wild dynamic. So all this is just going on and on for all these years. And so during this time, we're watching the receivership. We're watching his reports that he's giving out, and then we're watching the actual asset sales and just seeing what just doesn't match up very well. So that's part of the interesting part, is just sitting around watching all that go on like that.
I wrote a story about a guy named Donovan Davis, and he went to trial and was found guilty of running a Ponzi scheme, not because he actually did anything, but he was kind of duped into it by two con men, duped him into being a part of the company, and they duped him into being a part of the company because he had his family was wealthy. Mm-hmm. They had wealthy friends. Donovan was their first investor. So there's two guys start a Forex trading firm. They go to Donovan because one of the guys was like a friend of the family. His parents were friends of, his parents were friends of Donovan's family. Mm. So he comes in and says to Donovan, "Hey, we're doing a Forex trading. Would you mind investing? We're kind of trying to drum up business." So Donovan gives him like $100,000. A month later, there's like $112,000 in the account. A month after that, there's like $24,000 or $26,000. So he's made like $26,000 in 2 months. He's like, "Wow, this is amazing! Like, this is like over 100% return on my money, and annually, of course." And he's like, "This is amazing." So these guys come and "Would you mind if we pitch your family and some of your friends?" He's like, "Yeah." They pitches them. He's like, "I'm doing great." Mm-hmm. And so the family invests about $1 million into it. And then they go to Donovan, and Donovan tells a couple friends, they invest money. They go to Donovan and say, "Donovan, would you be interested in being a part of the firm?" And he's like, "Are you serious?" Donovan, by the way, is his family sells dirt. It's one of those businesses that you don't know exists, but mm-hmm. like in Florida, we're at sea level or below. So you have to buy dirt from someplace and move it to build, right? To build a subdivision. Yeah. And so that's what his family does. And so Donovan is trained to basically drive these massive earth movers and be a diesel mechanic. You don't know anything about Forex trading. Right. And so, of course, these two guys go to him and say, "Would you come in?" And all you have to do is raise money. And he thinks, "That's great. I can do that. I just got to schmooze people. I can just tell people about how great I'm doing with you guys." So he does that for the next year. He raises like $17, $18 million. And then the whole thing collapses. It's actually a Ponzi scheme. Donovan didn't know it was a Ponzi scheme. He goes immediately to the U.S. attorney, and the U.S. attorney says, "We'll look into it." And they go to all these investors, and all the investors are like, "Donovan's the one who told us to invest." Yeah. So they indict Donovan along with everybody else. He goes to trial. The two con men cooperate against him. Donovan knew the whole time. So they get their sentence cut. Yeah. They all do like this one guy doesn't even do any time. One guy, I think he does a year. Next guy does like maybe 3 or 4 years. Donovan got 17 years. He's still in prison.
17 years?
Yeah.
How much was the loss?
Like $20 million, but he went to trial.
Oh, yeah.
They don't like that, bro. They don't like that. They're not happy about that at all.
Yeah.
And so he and his lawyer the whole time was like, "Even if you lose Donovan, the most you'll get is 3 or 4 years." So he goes. He's like, "Yeah, he told me if you get more than 4 years, I'll give up my license." And Donovan goes, "Well, I got 17 years." He's still practicing. Yeah. So anyway, the point is that during this whole process, the judge, who hates Donovan's guts, brings in a receiver to manage all of the stuff. And there was still, I forget how much money was still left. He got like $4 or $5 million. Start selling off assets that Donovan says was stuff that I bought before I even was a part of this whole thing. Like they're selling off my boats, my cars, like stuff and they're trying to sell off stuff that his family owns.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "That's my dad's car. Like, what are you talking about? My parents bought that."
I mean, the receiver's trying
to grab assets from his parents.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's funny, but it's not funny. But it's funny because what happens is because there's a quote from the judge which always cracks me up that the receiver is selling off stuff, but he's selling it off, pennies on the dollars. Like, I mean, like, it didn't even make sense how low he's selling this stuff. And everybody always kind of tells me that in the receivers, like they sell it off to people that you're basically selling it off to people and then they resell it, and then a year later the receiver might get his cut. Like it's like a good old boys network. And so what's funny is that it's kind of like known but unknown, right? You kind of know it, but it's not really talked about. And what's so comical about it is this particular receiver had done it so blatantly. Like, you shouldn't be living in a $3.5 million house. You're a lawyer. Right, you're a lawyer who's a receiver, who's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to be making this kind of money. Anyway, eventually the FBI gets involved and they start investigating him, and they find out that this guy has embezzled like $20 million or something. And when he gets including money from Donovan's company. So money, the $3 or $4 million that could have gone back to some of these investors is gone.
Right.
Did the receiver basically take himself out, or did he flee? I feel there was something kind of interesting about the way that ended up too. And the FBI during, I think, the raid, I think maybe he might have done something. I don't know. I'd have to reread it. But what's funny is the quote from the judge. So think about it. Donovan's defense is, at the time, these guys it appeared to me they were making money, and that this was a good investment. That's his whole defense, which kind of makes sense. I mean, granted, he doesn't really realize he has a fiduciary responsibility to these people that are donating money. He's just saying, I'm going based on the fact that it looks like a good investment, and it had been a good investment. And and so in retrospect, it wasn't, but at the time it looked like it. So we have a quote from the judge who appointed the receiver, and he says, I mean, at the time he had a good reputation. He seemed very capable. So it's like your argument for appointing this guy, and you're not going to jail, Judge, is the same argument that Donovan's making for, he seemed good. He had a good reputation. It seemed okay. Like, but isn't that Donovan's excuse? You said that wasn't acceptable.
That's not going to work out.
And you appointed this guy that ripped off $15 or $20 million worth of assets that should have gone to victims. Like, they're re-victimized.
Yeah.
And it's funny, in Donovan's case, remember the $1 million that he and his family ended up putting in? He's actually sentenced. Part of when they add up the loss, part of the loss is the $1 million.
His own money?
He's like, and that's like what pushes him over. You know how they have different brackets of money? That pushes him over. He's like, my million's what pushed me over the edge to get another enhancement.
How long did he get?
17 years.
How long ago was this?
Oh, gosh, 13, 14 years ago. He should be out. He really should be out now, but they're dragging it. He should be out like on an ankle monitor right now. He should be in a halfway house or probably home confinement. But the Bureau of Prisons is just dragging. They're just... and his judge is throwing up roadblocks for him to get out. I mean, his judge just for some reason has this complete dislike for him, and really it's because he went to trial. It was also the judge's first major case. I read the whole transcripts, and throughout the whole transcripts of the trial, the judge was a state court judge. He keeps saying to he keeps saying, and what does the state have to say? I mean, what does the government have to say? Through the whole, we're talking about days. And it's like you could tell he hasn't read stuff. He's not really, he's getting people's names wrong. He can't stand Donovan. Donovan literally will put in, like, let's say a 20-page motion. And, on the docket sheet, it says like it was entered at 1, at 1 o'clock or 1:15. Right, 1:12.
1:12 declined.
Literally 3 minutes later, like, you can't read the 20 or 30 pages in 3 minutes, and it just immediately declined. Like, as quickly as you saw it come in, you type up denied. You couldn't even read it. I mean, it's like 1:12, and at 1:15 it's denied. It's like, bro, you're not even fucking trying. Yeah. You don't even at least wait 2 hours. Make it seem like you don't.
But see, the judges have 100% discretion.
Totally.
There's just nothing you can do to a federal judge. He basically would have to go out and murder someone in order for him to be taken off the bench. And he probably still wouldn't.
Then, I mean,
I was going to say, he'd have to be incarcerated at that point. And it'd be like he'd be walking into the prison, and then they'd be like, okay, we're taking him off. Like he could be listening to cases that whole time while he's out on supervision.
Yeah. It's the wildest thing. Having this be my first experience at all with the legal system, it's just
You never believed that this is how it worked.
No, I was the guy. If there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
And the government's not going to waste their time doing just nothing.
Yeah. Well, everything's
concepts,
up there. Everything, people are so programmed to believe what the government tells them. It really is, and I'll use the Red Bull. When Red Bull was a guy, his name is Andrew Levinson. He said during voir dire at his trial, they were questioning the jury, or their future jury, potential jury, and one of the guys, one of the potential jurors, they're questioning him. They said, do you believe that you could find him, after reviewing all the evidence, you could find him not guilty? And he goes, no. And they were like, what do you mean, no? You haven't even seen anything yet. He goes, well, he was indicted on 22 counts of wire fraud. He did something.
Yeah.
And that's what they think. And Red Bull was like, and I appreciate him saying that. He just was honest. Everybody else is thinking it, but they know the appropriate thing to say is, yeah, if I look at the evidence and it isn't, I could find him not guilty. That's what they know what to say. To him, he's like, no.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. They couldn't indict you on 22 counts if you weren't guilty of something. Right. That's what That's what they think. So at least he said it. And that's what Red Bull always says. He's like, at least he said it.
Yeah.
And of course, he didn't get it on the jury.
No.
But can't have that guy on there.
No. That's wild. Yeah, so my receivership, within like the first few months of the receivership, I mean, he's billing out like almost $100,000 a month straight away.
How could you do that? I mean,
well, because everybody's involved, right? Like he gets his legal bill, his law firm gets the legal bill, and then the accounting firms, and then he hires specialist lawyers. Yeah, it's just the wildest thing. So the summer of 2020, when I'd found out that the FBI was called in to interview my ex-employees, I also found out that he had already put his son on payroll. And, so there was a situation where we had to turn over our house to the receivership, which is a hysterical story. So we're all going to meet at my house to turn over the property to the receivership, right?
Okay.
And this is important because, here in Florida, this is one question I get quite a bit is, well, your house should be protected, it's homesteaded. Okay, let me tell you something. If the federal government comes in and says, we're going to sue you to oblivion or you're going to give up your house, you're going to give up your house because you have no money because your assets are all seized. So the house was included. So we met all there at the house to turn over the assets. And his son, the receiver's son, is running from room to room laughing. Look at this, look at this, look at this.
How old's his son?
I'm not really sure, but he's not young. I was just like flabbergasted. And so that's going on. And this is a time when I'm turning over the watches as well. So the receivership brought in people from Sotheby's auction house, which was actually very good because it's very reputable. That's a great way to get rid of these watches. But the people from Sotheby's flew down and they were there and everybody's all very solemn and serious. And so they're going over everything. And this guy's running from room to room, making jokes and sounds. And some of my ex-employees are there as well. It's like a big party. And he's got 6 other attorneys there with himself. And so we're all sitting there turning over everything. And one of the things that happens is we're sitting in the back room and I'm just watching them catalog everything. And I really don't want to leave until everything gets cataloged correctly, right? So he comes down the hallway and I'm in a conversation with the guy from Sotheby's because he's asking me specifically about some watches and their paperwork and so forth. So I'm telling him. And he comes in and he interrupts and he says, Aaliyah, did you want a cookie with your sandwich? Yeah, he had to break up the conversation to ask Leah if she wanted a cookie with her sandwich. And then it was nice enough to turn and ask us if we wanted a sandwich. He was catering a party at the house.
Right.
For everybody there. And he wanted to make sure. I'm like, no. So we did not have sandwiches at the house party at my house.
Right.
With the investors' money. So hysterical story. So I knew he had him on payroll, and very early on in the receivership. And one of the other attorneys that I had interviewed for the criminal side, another ex-U.S. attorney here in Tampa at a very good law firm, he had actually mentioned to me when I told him this story. I told him everything that was going on, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised about that. I heard something that he was looking for a job." And I'm like, "Well, Dad got him a job. That's pretty cool. So he's all squared away now." Yeah. So so the receivership would go on and on, right? And so we would find out things as it progressed on. And so in the case of my receivership, this is when the market was shooting through the roof, right? In the 2020 to, let's say, now. And so he was selling properties to wholesalers below market, and the wholesalers were flipping them within 30 to 60 days and making an extra 10, 20% on like dozens of properties. Inside of 30 days, they're already flipping the properties.
Right.
So they clearly were selling them below value because somebody just walked in, did almost nothing, and got rid of it, right? And there's dozens of those. So the other interesting thing the receivership came up with an idea is that, very innovative, he came up with an idea that he was going to create an auction house that was going to charge the buyers of the properties, of these properties, 5%. And that was going to save the investors money.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So if you're an investor and you're about the business of buying assets or houses, and you go to an entity and they're like, "Yeah, so we have this house here, you can bid on it. By the way, there's a 5% fee." What's the first thing you do?
Well, discount at 5%, right?
Right. But in his land, no, everybody's going to pay a 5% premium.
Well, he's a bureaucrat. They don't understand. That's, you don't have bureaucrats run businesses. You have them work for the government.
And that's where a large. He's on like a gray land. He's not really in the government, but it is the government. It's the weirdest thing.
Well, he can't lose.
So, no. He's untouchable.
Like none of this is affecting his paycheck.
Yeah, so I would bring these examples to my attorneys and be like, "Well, listen, can we do anything about this?"
No.
I mean, at the end of the day, if we're trying to get investors their money back, this is a problem. And like, "Yep, there's nothing to do. Nothing to do." And so so he's selling the houses at a discount, and then, like I mentioned, I was selling off a bunch of cars, and I had them already being shipped to places to be sold, or already had agreements in place to sell. He canceled all those and sold the cars off at losses. Like he lost like over at least $300,000 that I can find that by not keeping the contracts that I had in place to sell the cars. He just canceled them all. He just sat on them.
So somebody's going to buy one of the cars for $400,000. He cancels the contract and sells it to somebody else for $320,000.
Exactly. And he just over and over and over again. So one of the cars we had back in 19, we got one of the very first Cullinans here in town, the Rolls-Royce truck.
Right.
And so we had that car there on the property, and like, I don't know, 6-7 months later, suddenly I'm getting an email from my attorney. "Yeah, the receiver's attorney needs you to sign off on this title. Need you to sign off on this title." And I'm like, what? Out of all the things, like, she wants me to sign this thing. Like, I think I'd signed only 2 titles over. I had a lot of assets, but there's only like a couple of times they wanted me to like stop what I was doing and sign something and give it back to them. And it was a title for the truck. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. It's weird because it was like, I think it was a 1-pay lease. And I think the title belongs in the bank's name.
Right.
And so I was kind of confused by it. So I was thinking about it. And she already had it filled out with the mileage on there. And I looked at it and I was like, I didn't drive that truck, but I don't think that's what that was. And so when we went to turn over, there was a couple different situations where we were turning over property to the receivership, right? And one of them with the cars was, I already got a feeling that there was something not great going on for me. And so I was taking pictures of all the odometers of the cars. And so I had taken a picture of the Cullinan, fortunately. And so this went on for a couple of days, this email. And finally it got nasty. Like, if he doesn't sign this, we're going to take it to the judge. And so my attorneys are like, "Oh, okay, we don't want to go to take this to the judge. Just sign off on it, Brian." And so I stopped what I was doing and I looked up in the pictures, and I found that the mileage that I had for the Cullinan was actually different than the mileage they had, but what they had was actually less. So I mentioned this to a couple of people around town. Now, keep in mind, the receivership has got all my same employees there. He gave them all raises. Most of them are still working there today. And so, we did a lot of business around town. So there's a lot of people giving me feedback over the years about things in general. And so one of the stories I got was they saw the Cullinan driving around town in 2020. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's under the receivership. So I'm confused now. I'm wondering why the mileage was different and why they wanted me to sign off on it. And so finally, when I presented the evidence, it was, the response was, good catch. It was dropped. So I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I already know the FBI is investigating me, U.S. Attorney's Office, the SEC, the receivership, and this lady is trying to get me to sign off on odometer fraud because it's right there on the thing. This, if there's any variation, it's odometer fraud. And I'm like, wow, what an easy thing for them to get me on. You know what I mean? Like to add to the whatever they're building on my case.
I thought you were saying that they had driven. That somebody was driving the vehicle and rolled the odometer backwards.
No, I don't know that per se, but I did hear the car was on the road after I didn't have it.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'd heard. But I know that the odometer statement that she wanted me to sign was different than the one.
Was it higher, more mileage, or less?
I don't want to get into detail.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So that was a pretty big sticking point for me. I was like, oh yeah, this is just that's where this is.
Well,
going.
they're kids in a candy store, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Another great example is they. I've had personal ownership of a mobile home park here in town, and I had bought it as a semi-distressed asset, and I had spent $500,000 buying 11 brand new mobile homes from Titan here in town to be on the property. They're brand new units, and I got them at a pretty significant discount. And after COVID hit, everything just ran through the roof, right?
Right.
So the value of these mobile homes, because it went from suddenly you could get a mobile home any day of the week if you just ordered it,
right,
to now there's like a 2 or 3 year waiting list, right? So the value of these mobile homes that I just put on there and they had full factory warranties doubled, right? So the receivership puts up the property for sale and sells it. And in his paperwork, he produces, he has to ask the judge permission to sell it, and he gives his story on why he should sell it, right, in the documents. And so in the documents, he says, we offered it at, I think it was $3 million, and we got $3.5 million for it. We think this is a good sale. We think this is a good thing we did. And it's just a normal arm's length transaction. They have those words in the document. And, this is a good thing. I saw that, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I looked it up. And I've got friends that have realtor licenses and so forth, so I had access to the MLS. And turns out, it seems like it was transferred to the attorney that was handling all of the properties as far as the real estate sales. It certainly appears as transferred to his brother-in-law. So the sales price, they say, was 3.5, but the mobile homes on there were worth an extra $1 million. So we actually paid $2.5 million for the property because he's got $1 million worth of mobile homes he can sell. So while all the receivership was going on, in the background was the receivership sued the law firms that had represented me and built the companies with me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess the statute of limitations ran out for the first law firm, Duane Morris, but Fox Rothschild and DLA Piper were sued by the receiver for bad paperwork, essentially, not compliant. So roughly around 2022-ish, the rumor of the settlement, I think that was the time period that the settlement was coming out. And so ultimately they ended up settling for about $22 million each. So both the law firms together paid $44 million.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I paid $27 million and the two law firms paid $44. So it's $75 million in just, I call it compliance drama.
Right.
Penalties, fines, whatever, So the law firms paid up, And I learned in that process that I had a claim because I was represented personally. And so if I could get an attorney to represent me, I could sue DLA Piper and Fox Rothschild.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So I went on a little mission for about a month, scouring the universe on Google Land for law firms that would represent me because I don't have enough money to do it myself. There's no way I have enough money to go sue DLA Piper, right? And I gave up all my information. I had my attorneys prepare my information for me to explain in legalese, what the situation was and why it mattered. They chewed on it on the commercial division for a while and came back and said they're not going to take the case, declined to me. And my attorney's response was, well, that was semi-predictable. Nobody wants to go up against DLA Piper. These guys make like $1 billion a week. It's just, they're just too big. So that's my legal saga inside the legal saga.
What you'd be suing them in the state of Florida?
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to think. Yeah, I have an attorney that represented me for the lawsuit against Warner Brothers and Incarcerated Entertainment, and but he is out of Pennsylvania, and but he was, I guess, one of his associates was able to fight the lawsuit in Florida. Mm-hmm. And he fights all kinds of. I mean, he just won a massive lawsuit. He's always suing these big companies, but so he may be interested. But
that I'd love to chat with him. I think that my statute of limitations has run out. As I recall, you only have 2 years, and so you've got to get it filed within 2 years of learning about it.
Okay.
And so I think that 2020 was but maybe there's something else going on. I don't know. But that was. Disheartening because it was probably my only chance to reclaim anything.
Right.
And it just got blown up right out of the water. So by the middle of 2024, my attorneys had let me know that, my criminal attorneys now, had let me know that there had been contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I think it was September or October of 2024, my two criminal attorneys called me up and said, yeah, we need to meet. We just met with the U.S. Attorney. I'm like, okay. Cool. And I'd been online enough to know there was this thing called a proffer and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And nobody asked to interview me. That's another amazing thing about this whole process is that the FBI has never interviewed me once ever. The U.S. Attorney's Office, the IRS has never interviewed me. No one's ever asked for my opinion on anything or my thoughts or my story or whatever. So the two attorneys apparently go into this meeting and it's called a reverse proffer. So my attorneys show up and the government gives their big presentation on the board. Okay. So my guys come back from that and they say, yeah, they're looking at everything.
Are you there?
No, I wasn't invited, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, I would be like, I want to be there because I don't care how good your attorneys are.
Yeah.
They don't really know the case.
No.
They're never going to know it as well as you.
No.
Because you could be there and say, whoa, that's not true. Wait, what are you talking about? That's not what happened. Mm-hmm. Where they're just going to be sitting there going, okay.
Yeah, I don't like that part of it. I really enjoy these two attorneys. I like them a lot. I would use them again, but I don't love that piece of it. So they came back and they had a meeting with me and they had a pile of paperwork on their desk. And it basically was just all the consumption items, cars, watches, whatever. And it put it down on the table and they're like, yeah, this is what they're really talking about and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I had a lifestyle for sure. Yeah, I mean, okay, And so we talked about all the things that we would do about the specifics because they were looking at, I think, wire fraud, mail fraud, that kind of stuff, right? And I'm like, no, we can rebuttal all this stuff. I got emails for this. I got emails. Because at this point, I spent all the time in the world on 9,500 emails correlating everything. And so I feel very confident about that. And then they said, well, you have the tax issue. And I said, well, yeah, I've got a tax issue because they seized my life in early 2020. And I wasn't able to pay.
Right.
So,
but they've taken it all back, so I don't have it anymore. I don't have that lifestyle or any of those assets.
It's separate. The SEC and receivership, they took everything back for sure, but the IRS is separate. They don't care about that situation. So
So I make $3 million. I owe $600,000 to the IRS or $800,000 to the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
The government comes in and seizes the $3 million, and I still owe $8 million to the IRS?
Yes. Yep.
Well, that's some bullshit.
Yeah. Plus penalties, plus interest. So I knew that I had a tax issue, but at the time, you know, the attorneys are more concerned about wire fraud and mail fraud because that has 20-year statutes, right? And the tax stuff, they're like, we probably get that worked around just a payment schedule and, you know, figure that out.
Payment schedule for what? Selling used cars? Like, what are you doing for a living right now?
Exactly.
Like, who's hiring you at this point?
No one's hiring.
Right.
Me. Yeah. So that was the conversation all through that process. So finally we get to, the October-ish, September time period of 2024. And so I had this big long meeting with my attorneys, and we go through everything, and I'm like, okay. I'm thinking in my mind, I'm self-soothing at this point, right? Like, I got everything after 5 years of going through emails and correlating everything. And they said, yeah. So one of the last things they showed us was the taxes, so forth. I'm like, well, the taxes, and they said, no, they want to take it criminally. And so that's something I forgot to mention before. End of February, I contacted my new CPA that I had hired after the receivership.
Right.
And I had all of our business over there, my personal, Nicole's personal, and our business activities, all with this new CPA firm. And this is the CPA firm that I had given the business to manage the QOZ and the REIT for us when I had it during that few months in 2020. And so they said, oh, by the way, you probably already know this, but the IRS raided the office on early, last week or something. I'm like, no, I had no idea.
Whose office? Their office?
The CPA office, the new CPA office. So
Why?
I said,
For your stuff?
Yep. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, we the IRS came through and they demanded all your stuff and they're going to interview everybody. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what this is about. So I said, can you send me over the document? And just to show you the government has a sense of humor, the grand jury subpoena is also dated February 14th, 2024.
Okay.
So they love Valentine's Day.
Right.
On Valentine's Day is a very active day for paperwork with the government. And it listed Brian Davison, Nicole Davison, and Equialt and all this stuff. I'm like, they've got to know that there's no Equialt activity, going on with the new accounting firm. And so whatever, that happened. And so what happens when your accounting firm gets raided? You get fired. Mm-hmm. So I'm on my way to go find another accounting firm. And my wife and her family, they take their business elsewhere too afterwards. And so that happened in early 2024. And then by mid or late 2024 is when I had the reverse proffer. And that's when they made it clear to my attorneys the tax issue was a much larger issue, and they believed that I manipulated my taxes, and I'm like, well, what did they think they did? And they said, well, let's go through it. And so of course they had my tax returns there, and there were 131 pages. I'm like, well, what's the problem with it? So it all comes down to, I would learn this from reading the transcripts of the agents' interviews with the CPAs, was shareholder loans. So one of the ways that accountants you can take money out of a company and defer taxes till later is do a shareholder loan and just pay back the money later from whatever asset you had,
Okay.
which my case would totally apply because the cars and the assets that I own, like the watches, had gone up exponentially in value. And so it's a very plausible activity. So they decided they wanted to throw all that out. So the minute that the IRS throws out your deductions, no matter what they are, you owe money right away.
Right.
And so in my case, they threw all of that out, and the number they had was like $6.3 million in taxes owed. So I'm like, well, okay, that's a huge problem, but I can explain this. I got, again, emails, and all my stuff was prepared by a professional accountant that are in good standing, blah, blah, blah. And so they said, yep, we can do all that. But, we're looking at probably, anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 in, a case. And more than likely, they're going to bring other charges too if you don't sign on for this one. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they had your wife's name circled in red on the presentation board of your taxes because we had filed jointly.
Mm-hmm.
So they said at the end of the day, you're going to end up facing your own charges, and they're going to more than likely charge your wife. That's how they telegraph that information to a defending attorney. And one of my attorneys actually literally just came from the public defender's office in Hillsborough. So he knew exactly. Yeah. So from there, I just entered in down the road of negotiating a plea deal. Told my attorneys I really can't afford to have you guys negotiate this out. I got a public defender. He kind of walked me through all the rest of the process. And so in early 2025, we're negotiating the plea deal, right? Dollar amounts and all this other stuff. And they're trying to go back all these years, and so they asked me to sign a tolling agreement. So I did, because I'm trying to limit the damage in the negotiating part, right? But it works for me a little bit. So one of the things that they brought up was my tax avoidance. But I'm like, no. In 2016, I paid over $1 million in personal income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, I wrote the check, you cashed it. So I do have a history of paying fair amount of taxes. And so what they did is they allowed me to go hire a third-party CPA firm, and the government paid for it. So my public defender found somebody that I think everybody had to approve it, like the U.S. Attorney's Office and my defender guy had to find somebody that would do this. And so he reviewed all the paperwork, and he came up with a number of like 2.7. So it's a difference of like $3.5 million. And so he gives them this report.
Give a shit if it's fucking. I mean, if it's, what I'm saying, it's undoable. It's undoable. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to me, it's like that's it. It's.
What do you mean?
I mean, if I can't pay it, I can't pay it. Doesn't matter if it's $100,000 or it's $6 million or it's $40 million.
Well,
I can't pay it. I don't have it. You took all my shit.
100%. I can't pay the taxes because they seized everything years ago, right? But what I'm thinking right now is, I can pay it back over my lifetime. And at this point, I'm a little bit freaked out. So I'm online studying everything about sentencing and criminal, and I'm aware of this chart about how they get these levels of enhancements and stuff.
Federal sentencing
So
guidelines.
I'm like, I got to get a low number.
Yeah.
Because this is like a video game, right? It's like golf, So so we gave them that report, and I'm like, yes. And we waited like 6 weeks to get it. And I'm like, it wasn't what I was looking for, because I thought I owed no taxes.
Right.
But I'm like, I'll take it, man. Yeah, they're like, yeah, no, we don't want to do that. They just rejected it. I'm like, So.
But I thought they agreed on the third party.
They didn't agree to accept the report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know how the game.
Yeah. So
We'll consider it.
Yep. So I signed off on it, and I have a deal now, right? And the judge signs off on it as well. And guess what judge I got?
The same judge
Same judge
with the receiver
from 2020 with the receiver. So she's been getting reports for 5 years on me. Brian's every version of an asshole.
Right.
And great, here we go. I finally got my life reduced down to just a tax issue. And so I'm like, oh, well, this could be bad. So I asked my attorneys, is there any way to get out of this? Get like a fresh start with an attorney? Nope. No, there's, technically yes, but the backfire would be so bad, you don't want any part of it. So there we go. So I go off to PSR land. You're familiar with the PSR land? Yeah.
Pre-sentence report.
Oh, yeah.
So the probation officer shows up.
Yeah. So my wife's family paid to hire white collar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Justin
Paperny.
Yeah. So, because I really want to be actively involved at this point. Part of my thing.
How did you find white collar?
YouTube.
YouTube, okay.
Yeah.
Was it through this channel? Because it was through this channel.
No, I had found them years earlier.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
No.
Because there's through my link.
No.
Justin has to show me a chat.
No.
I was about to say though, he has text. I forgot. I probably didn't tell you. He texted me like a month or two ago saying like that he's gotten calls and.
Oh yeah, I get updates all the time. I'm in shock how many people are contacting him.
Yeah.
Through the channel. I get like every couple of days, so-and-so clicked on the link, filled out the form from our link.
From your YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's over. There's got to be 30 or 40 of them, but I guess none of them are hiring him because I haven't gotten any checks, Justin. No, she's joking.
Yeah,
I'm sure it takes some time.
Yeah. He's full price, that's for sure. But they're very good.
Yeah.
So I've been watching them for years at home, right?
Yeah.
So
you hired Justin. So
I hired Justin, and I
pre-sentence
got
report,
involved. Yep.
The probation officer comes.
Yeah.
Super nice person.
Super sweet. No, she was actually a wonderful person to be around. And so you go in for the meeting, right, with your attorney. And my defense attorney is like, listen, I know you think you have a lot to say and you have a lot rattling around in your head, but listen, this is a tax plea deal. Don't talk about anything else, and don't go down any rabbit holes or any roads. Just answer yes or no, but answer honestly, and just make it a nice, pleasant meeting. Okay. So we had this meeting, and she starts asking me all these questions like, well, what did you do before? What's the last couple of companies you've worked at? What jobs have you had? And of course, all the stuff that's involved with the SEC, I have to, say it to her. And so my attorney's like, he's telling me not to say stuff, and I'm stopping him halfway. I'm like, do you want me to answer her question or not? It was the funniest situation. And so that meeting happened. But I didn't feel bad about it. I felt like they were just trying to, she was doing her job and he was doing his job, right? And I was like, it kind of is what it is, So she puts together her PSR report. And when she puts it together, she shares it with the prosecutors and the defense, right, before it becomes final, I guess.
Yeah, well, everybody can come back and say, wait, those enhancements don't apply, or the government will come back and say, no, you didn't give him enough time.
Right.
You need to. He also you give him this enhancement and this enhancement, and he's cruel to small children and dogs. That's a 2-point enhancement. Yeah.
Right. So that happened in my case. So she looked up all my company stuff.
You hurt someone's feelings once.
So she recommends a 2 points enhancement for illegal getting the money that I didn't pay the taxes on. I guess that's how I say it. Yeah.
Okay.
Illegal.
Fraudulent obtaining the funds fraudulently.
Yeah. However they say that, right? So.
But isn't your charge tax evasion? Is it charge tax evasion?
Yes. So the charge is a version of the tax. I just call it tax fraud, but I guess it's evasion. But. So she adds on all that stuff and writes a glowing paragraph about all the SEC charges. I'm like, oh. So I go back to my attorney, and bottom line is he asked the prosecutors, okay, are you going to proof up on this? Do you want this to be a thing? And they say no, they decline it. So she leaves the paragraph in there about it, and recommends the 2-point enhancement, but I don't know if the 2-point enhancement stuck for the final or not, but the paragraph about the SEC stuff did. And so the reason why this is interesting is because it would show up at sentencing. So sentencing day comes, and we all go to the courthouse, right? And of course, the receiver walks up, and the receiver's attorney, and like 5 other people. I'm guessing they're IRS and FBI, it's like a party for them. And it's just me, my wife, and my daughter, and my defender there that day. So we're sitting there at the sentencing, and the judge reads the paperwork, and one of her first questions was, well, Mr. Davison here, he's accused of all these other crimes and everything. Why are we just here on tax, and we're only, what are we doing here? And so she starts asking the prosecutor why basically you're not charging him with a bunch of other charges. And so he's kind of backpedaling. And he says, this
they were
is
civil.
The plea deal.
Anyway, that's already been that's a civil case, and it's already been handled.
And she even made the comment. She's like, yeah, Mr. Davison didn't pay $27 million of the goodness of his heart. And of course I'm thinking, well, no, it's because you seized it, and then I had to negotiate it back from the government. So my attorney gets up to address something else very soon after. There's a lot of going back and forth, and my attorney says something to the effect of, "Well, it wasn't really in our scope to deal with all these other items, Your Honor. This is a plea and a tax case," and she hands it to him too. She says, "No, you have plenty of resources. You could have You could have defended this. And she went on a little bit about it. I'm like, man, this is not good for me. This is really not good. So she gets there's the point in the sentencing where you ask for victims impact statements. Yeah. And there's no victims in the room, and there's nobody there, and because all the investors have been paid. So
what about all the investors that lost money?
Yeah, they're all there.
Yeah,
they're all there.
They're all there. So
they're all packed in the room.
So how do you have victims that didn't lose money? How do you have a victim if he didn't lose money?
Well, the IRS lost money on me. That's I was there for
So you got one victim. The
yes,
IRS.
But,
okay.
So she asked if anybody wants to speak, and of course the receiver waves his hand and says, he wants to be heard. So he shuffles up to the box there, and he gets sworn in, and the judge starts asking him questions, and he goes on to say like how much the value of the estate was at this point in years, and this and that, and none of it made any sense really. But the most comical thing was, and his daughter had a Ferrari. My daughter's in the back, and I gasped a little giggle, like, no, my daughter never had a Ferrari. That's absurd. He's just throwing stuff out there. And the whole purpose of that was to bring up the SEC case and make it as damaging for me as possible. And that's when he said on the stand, because she asked about the gag order, the judge did.
Right.
And asked about if the gag order applied to the criminal and or the civil. She wanted a clarification on that, which really speaks to the fact that the judges don't understand the system as far as how that all works. And so my receiver says, yes, we instituted the gag order in the 1970s when I was there, but people wouldn't walk out of the courthouse and say they didn't do it after the court proceedings.
Guilty.
Yeah. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I got a guy in front of me. Now he's in his 80s, right? But he's actually one of the guys that took away people's First Amendment rights just to settle with the government and not go to trial.
Right.
That's amazing to me. So I find that to be amazing. So yeah, so I got sentenced. I got 36 months. Yeah. Got to pay back forever.
And did you go right out of the courtroom, go get your fingers printed, your picture taken, and leave, or had you already done that?
No, I've already done that.
You'd already done that. You'd already pled guilty. That happened when
Correct.
And they let you out. Did you have an ankle monitor on, or
no?
Just
I've been out on my own bond or whatever, and they've been fantastic about that.
Letting you just roam the streets.
Yeah, dude, I'm just a wild maniac. I mean, do not put me near taxes.
Yeah, that's So did you? What did the PSR say? So do you call it a PSI or PSR?
PSR. Yeah.
Because it's a pre-sentence investigative report.
Yeah.
So PSR.
Yeah.
So what did it say? Did it recommend 36 months? Or was it a range? It was a range, but you were going to get the low end, right? That's what you were being told they were going to recommend the low end?
Yeah, I don't recall that part. I recall very, very clearly she was all about the 2-point enhancement.
Okay.
But she didn't get that. But the prosecutors were asking for 47 months.
Okay.
And my defenders, like, listen, you've already been here under watch for 5 years. You haven't done anything.
Yeah.
You're going to try to rebuild your life. So he asked for 18 months.
Right.
And she's like, yeah, no. Yeah, she even mentioned in her part of her conversation in the courtroom that day, about the prosecutors asking for all this long time for PPP loans. And,
right.
So she was, I got the feeling she was disappointed that I wasn't charged with more or asked for more time. Yeah.
Okay. So you got 36 months.
Yeah, 36 months.
What were you expecting?
I was expecting about that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not shocked by it. I didn't necessarily think I was going to get anything lighter. I'd hoped for it, right? But,
yeah.
But once I realized I had the same judges before, and I wasn't able to make any payments, I knew that it wasn't going to be great.
They're terrifying people.
They are. Well, everything is their discretion.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. It's almost like we don't have a criminal or a criminal justice system. We have a prosecutor system because it's whatever the prosecutors say, right? Like in my experience, if they ask for 47 months, that's where we're starting, and the conversation might deviate a little bit or above it, right? So if they say it's 36 months or they say it's 18 months, then that is the conversation. It's fascinating to me.
What is the similarity between Tai's case and your case?
Well, the similarity really begins with the headlines, because it's less about the actual losses for the investors and what happened, it's all about the headline catching fire across the internet, right?
Right.
So I've read through the indictment, and there's a lot of really interesting pieces to it. There's some quotes in there, some emails that are pretty damning about, the language he uses with investors and so forth. Not so great. But the SEC complaint indicates on the first page it's $112 million. But on page 9, it says they raised $230 million. Doesn't tell us where the other $117 million in cash went. So the indictment does talk about how they raised both debt and equity. So if you take an investor money, they'll either get equity in the company, the upside, or they'll get a promissory note of some sort, a debt instrument, meaning there's usually payments attached to that at some level, either monthly, quarterly, or annually.
Right.
So one of the things they can say is that the money raised on the equity side went to the debt payments with the other investors. So I know that some of the ways around that from other investment vehicles, if you just borrow money from a bank, a true third party, and you raise equity from investors and the investors' equity goes to the payments, that's considered acceptable. So it's hard to say what exactly went on inside the vehicle itself.
You think initially they file a lawsuit to start the process and get him into court, assuming he may end up wanting to go to trial. And then, but here's what I'm getting at is like I have a buddy that's actually still in prison. Is that initially they came in and they filed a lawsuit, and he just pled the fifth, like, right. He's not. I'm not going to. He's not. He really sat there and just allowed the SEC to lay out the entire case. He didn't really defend himself. One of his co-defendants defended himself, got up on the stand, and actually lied a bunch of times. But in the end, they lost that lawsuit. But for them, the whole company had gone under anyway, and it was really just suing the company. Like he didn't really, what I'm saying? Like they're suing the company. These guys are representing the company, so they're there. But it wasn't going to spill over to him, and there wasn't much he could do. Like he wasn't really concerned. It wasn't a big deal, right? But what they really did was they used that as a vehicle to do like depositions and a bunch of work on the company and get some people to make statements. And what they didn't realize at the time, although I'm sure their lawyers did, is that they were really laying out a whole bunch of information for the FBI to come in and investigate the whole thing and take all that information and turn it into a criminal complaint and indict them criminally. And now they do have a problem.
100%. That is always an avenue that I think the government looks for in everything I've read and been able to see. So the SEC civil complaint is just that. It's their own rules and guidelines. But if you read the SEC training manual, there is a sentence in there that says we go about the business, something to the effect of we go about the business of working with criminal cases, referrals at the same time. So they absolutely are in their training manual to go down that road. Yeah, 100%.
So if they come across anything criminal, they're certainly going to send it to law enforcement,
right?
Or work with them hand in hand if they feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah, and so my view on going to trial with the SEC and so forth is once they bring charges, you've already lost.
Right.
That's that area called Section 17A. There's the 2 and 3, and Tai Lopez that's a couple of his charges are that. And it doesn't say necessarily that you had to do anything wrong, but it does talk about how just simply negligence. So if anybody feels like you were negligent in your duties, you're guilty of a securities fraud claim. So he's, in my view, he's already lost.
Yeah. It's the whole if you didn't know, you should have known.
Totally. Right. So he'll either do one of two general roads, right? If he decides to go down the road of I'm going to trial, like Mark Cuban, I think it'll probably take the better part of a decade of his life. He will spend probably $10 million on it, like Mark Cuban did, and it will come down to a couple of emails and a couple of texts. And it will largely be a popularity contest, much like Mark Cuban's trial was. Mark Cuban is one of the very few people to prevail in a securities fraud trial. And so that's why I think it's the only example that might apply to Tai Lopez based on his popularity on the internet. More than likely, he'll probably be given the advice to keep his mouth shut during this process and then settle with the SEC, close it out as quickly as possible.
That's the smartest move, right?
Well, that's what the attorneys will tell you. Just shut it down, pay the fine, and hold your breath and wait to see the criminal side's going to pick it up.
Right.
Yeah, so it's my experience that they're already working with the criminal side to pick it up. So, if he's got the financial means, which I think he might, he makes millions of dollars a year on his other ventures, I think. And I didn't see any sort of asset seizure in these documents. So I think he might be able to defend himself. So he could defend himself long enough in the civil trial to make it look like it's challenging for the criminal trial.
But you're saying that too, you didn't, you're saying there's no asset seizure. Is there a loss? It's saying a Ponzi scheme, but is it talking about an actual loss?
So as far as I think, everything I've read, there's no actual talking about losses.
That's why there's no asset seizure, right?
Well, so the asset seizure can come from perceived losses and also ill-gotten gains.
Okay.
So in what I've read here, they've only indicated about 16, 17 million in misappropriated money that they took out.
Okay, so they could come after that.
So they could come after that, and I've got a feeling he probably can pay it. So so he could pay that, close out the civil, and move forward. But there's two problems with that. I think that it's my estimate that the civil will keep working with criminal to go down the criminal road. And the second thing is he's got a very high likelihood he's got to sign that gag order once he signs the civil settlement. So he won't be able to talk about his case in public. So I don't know what that's going to do to his credibility going forward if he just can't talk about whatever happened. So the only headlines, the only news out there is whatever the government put out.
So has he made a statement or said anything since?
I haven't heard anything on the internet about it. I'm fascinated by it because the headlines match, right, really closely with my situation. But I haven't seen anything like that at all. I really believe he's taking his attorney's advice, which is probably hunker down, say nothing, and let them try to digest what's going on and try to minimize their losses just in the civil side.
In your experience or your guess, do you think that this would turn criminal? Do you think he would end up?
I have every belief that they're already working with criminal. Yeah. One of the main drivers for a successful prosecutor's career is getting headlines. You want to have high dollar amounts of stopping financial fraud, right? And the other is the headlines and the helps build the credibility of the prosecutors. Mark Cuban even said in one of his statements, all through the 10 years or so he was going through his situation with the SEC, those attorneys would come and go, and they would put on their resumes, on their public profiles, that they worked on the Mark Cuban case. And he hadn't even gone to trial yet. So there's a lot of, trying to posture themselves as far as, looking like they're really working for protecting people.
And I know you mentioned it in the podcast, Mark Cuban, he spent $12 million fighting the SEC. When was that? Was it, I don't know anything about it. It was
It was in the mid 2000s. I forgot when he first started it. I want to say I think it was after 2008. I'd have to look it up, but it took a whole decade, maybe 12 years or so. It was super long. It was the Mama stock, something like that. Yeah, he sold early and got out of it, and it all came down to a text, apparently, as I recall. Something like "I like to win" was the text, and that's what they were using at trial to indicate that he had the intent to try to have less losses on the stock trade.
It's
crazy.
It's pretty vague.
It's crazy. Yeah,
that could mean anything. I mean,
yeah, it's just the wildest thing what can get to trial, But he had the means to do it, and he's for a guy like that, he's all reputation, right? And Mark Cuban's not Mark Cuban. Who is he? So certainly I think that's why he had to do it. And Elon Musk was going to fight his SEC charges as well, but I think in one of his interviews, he pretty plainly says, the banks told me that if I didn't settle, I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, if he didn't settle with the SEC, they're going to pull their funding on his companies.
Right.
So
I remember hearing that statement.
yeah, so what are you going to do? It's no longer about the SEC case and fighting the issue. It's the leverage the entire system uses against you.
This is just kind of the overview. According to the recent lawsuit filed by the SEC, Tai Lopez and business partner Alex Murr were accused of defrauding investors of $112 million for a Ponzi-like scheme involving their company. While investors lost significant funds, the full extent of the individual loss is not yet public. Misleading investors between 2020 and 2022, Lopez and Murr acquired struggling retail brands like Radio Shack, Pier 1 Imports. The SEC alleges they made false claims of hundreds of investors about the brand's success of profitability and that they were on fire and with strong cash flow when none of them were profitable.
They're quoting Tai Lopez as saying, this is one of the best investment strategies you can invest in. And then also talking about the portfolio companies in general were, quote, on fire, and that, quote, cash flow is strong, unquote. Then the very next paragraph, the SEC complaint, it talks about.
I was going to say, listen, that doesn't mean anything. Well, I mean, cash flow is, what was it? Cash flow is what?
Cash flow is king.
Okay, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. It's like saying, profit. What is the profitability is on fire, or profits are on fire.
Well, he's talking about right here that cash flow, the companies were on fire and the cash flow is very strong.
It sounds like the company's on fire could mean it's fucking going
burning
under.
Cash flow.
Yeah, it's going under. It's on. Hey man, how's the company, man? It's on fire, bro. It's burning down.
Massive dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's dumpster fire. That doesn't mean anything.
But you can have strong cash flows in a company and have enough tax credits, especially if you're buying distressed assets, enough tax credits, enough write-downs that you're not profitable. Meaning that you don't owe the IRS any profits, but you definitely have enough cash flows to make all your debt liability payments and keep the business going.
Right.
So that's why, like on page 3 of the complaint, it's kind of confusing to me. It's like, well, both of these things can be true at the same time. So, but later on in the complaint, it does specifically talk about revenues were less than the liabilities, I think is what it says. And if that's the case, that'll be an issue. So we'll see how it goes. It's hard to tell. It's very, very broad. It's very, very general. If I had to guess, I think the Ponzi part comes down to they raised money, both equity and debt, in the same investment vehicle, and investors may have gotten 2 separate sets of documents. And the complaint does talk about how the equity was going to be used for anything in the normal course of business. And so in the normal course of business, a business will pay its debts with whatever cash it has. So if you have investors that are bringing in equity and bringing in debt, and a debt payment is due, and you use those investors, that equity from those other investors, to pay that debt instrument that was probably created like a year earlier, there's a pretty good argument for new investors versus old investors.
Yeah,
that's what they'll
the Ponzi-like payments in the overview, I guess, is to pay returns of early investors. Lopez and Murr allegedly used money from later investors. At least $5.9 million in returns were reportedly paid this way, rather than actual company profits.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me because my understanding was he was buying companies that were dead. They were defunct, right? Yeah. All of them were traditional brick and mortars. And I don't know what stage of the game those brick and mortar companies were in, if they were already going through a restructuring or had been restructured or not. And so the idea that he felt under pressure to do all of this so fast is pretty interesting to me.
The personal use of fund or the misuse of funds, the SEC alleges that Lopez and Murr misused approximately $16.1 million of investor funds for their own personal use.
Yeah.
Whistleblower involvement. Former employees reportedly tipped to the SEC in 2003, raising concerns about the company's financial dealings. So when
in 2003?
In 23.
23. I was going to say
so,
statute of limitations should be way up.
So when the company or when an employee does that, like just so Tai knows he's under investigation over these next 2 years, he knows something's coming, or how does that kind of?
That doesn't have to necessarily mean that he knows anything.
Yeah.
And that whistleblower also is eligible for, I'm sure, some kind of a cash.
Yeah.
I don't want to say prize, but cash payment of some kind.
Yeah.
So he may have not known anything.
Well, he's under a lot of pressure from not only his service providers like his CPA firms and his attorneys, but also the people that worked for them and anybody else that they may take the investigation to. I can only imagine that if a 3-letter agency calls up your typical business and they say, we think someone that you did business with has done something possibly criminal, we want to ask you about it.
They're going to comply.
They're going to give you whatever story you need me to tell you.
Yeah.
That's the story, because I don't really want you trashing into my business with the same investigation. So,
And is this the same thing that happened to you as far as this what I'm about to read next, or is this just kind of different? Because who was the people that took over your business? What'd you call them?
so my company was seized and put into a receivership.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it says investor settlement. An investor group reportedly took control of the brands from Lopez and Murr, which may have prevented individual lawsuits from those individuals. However, the settlement does not affect the SEC fraud case. So I guess that's different than your situation.
Yeah, it sounds to me like he knew he was in trouble, either out of his depth management wise or the company was just dying off. So they sold it to another entity. I think it's called Omni something or other. And in doing that, it all depends on the voting shares and how they were able to do that. But the SEC doesn't seem to have a problem with that sale. And that sale may be the best thing for the investors at the end of the day. But you're right. The SEC is... There's different rules, different universes. There's a university of or the universe of business, but then there's the universe of securities law. And to violate securities law takes shockingly little. I think, like I talked about earlier, first of all, securities, the only criteria they need to hit is prima facie. And then they also have Section 17A, 1, 2, and 3, which is all about strict liability. So to violate securities law, I don't think it takes hardly anything but the wind to blow for normal business to violate securities law.
And you mentioned because of the prima facie thing, right?
Yeah.
What does that? What was the definition? I know you mentioned it earlier in the podcast.
It just has to look like, or at first blush, basically. So the level of evidence and proof is different than that of a criminal trial, for example. Criminal, you typically, the goal, I think, is to show intent and then to back it up with a lot of documentation, proof, impact statements and so forth. Witnesses are great, So it takes shockingly little. Did you follow the Martin Shkreli case at all? The Pharma Bro guy? Okay. So he's another character who's not well loved broadly by American society.
Is he the one that bought the cancer medication?
Yeah, and then or AIDS. Was it
Yeah,
cancer
yeah.
or
And then,
AIDS?
well, whatever. And then jacked it way up, which is perfectly legal, but
Legal, but in bad form, I think,
Yeah.
most people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he, allegedly, I think he put a bounty on a piece of Hillary Clinton's hair at one point. And so I think he was really stirring up the pot a little bit as far as like
bounty on her hair.
I think he put didn't you read that anywhere?
No.
Do you know about that, Colby?
Oh yeah, I have no idea.
No idea. Okay. So anyway,
what was his name? What was his name?
Martin Shkreli. He's on YouTube now. He's done his time and he's out. So what I could read about his case specifically was there's a plethora of charges. Most of them, I think about half of them they beat. But what really sank him was they had an investor get on the stand and say something to the effect of Shkreli was supposed to have audited financials for this particular business entity, and he didn't. And so just that simple, I thought he was doing this, I thought he told me this way, and it wasn't. You're guilty of a civil crime or a securities crime.
In 2017, Martin Shkreli offered $5,000 bounty on Facebook for a strand of Hillary Clinton's hair during her book tour. Federal prosecutors cited the post as evidence that Shkreli posed a danger to the public and successfully petitioned to have his bail revoked while he awaited his sentencing for securities fraud. I'm curious from your experience, because you said you guys have the same prosecutor, so I just want to read the legal ash. This is the kind of last little title that I probably will read about the Tai Lopez case, but it says legal actions. The SEC complaint was filed in September 22, 2025, which is probably like a week ago, in Florida, in the Florida federal court, and it seeks civil penalties, disgorgement of ill-gotten gains. I don't know if I said that right. Mm-hmm. And Lopez and Murr to be barred from acting as officers or directors of a public company. Mm-hmm. So like your experience with this prosecutor, like what's your kind of take? going through it personally yourself?
We do. We share that, but I don't know that I can shed a lot of light on it. Like, for example, in my case, at no point that I recall, and not at the end, was I ever requested by the SEC to not be a director in a company or being involved in securities. So for a guy like me, I can run out and open up a fund tomorrow or go work at a fund tomorrow, I think. I have no restrictions on that. How they pick and choose that, I just don't know. That would be completely their discretion. I'm not sure how they would get around to deciding that.
Give us a prediction.
So I predict he'll probably try to settle it out. That's what his attorneys I'm sure are doing right now, because we haven't heard of him on the internet, as far as I know, making any public statements. Mm-hmm. So I think he's following the advice of the attorneys, like all the different attorneys that I had, all the same advice. Shut up. Let's contain this problem and work on the next problem whenever it shows up. So I suspect that's exactly what he's doing right now. In hindsight, I don't know that I would do that again. Because if you're going to end up signing that gag order, you might as well get as much information out there as possible forever. You know, that just is your only chance to tell your story the rest of your life. So I suspect that's the way it's going to go. I think if there's any other wrinkle in his life, the FBI is going to find it, and they're going to make him their project. Like, I was investigated for 5 years, and I'm 100% sure if they would have found something else that they would have, found a way to include that.
So do you think that the case will, regardless of whether he listens to the attorneys or not, ultimately you think it still turns into a criminal matter? Because you said you feel like they're already working with the criminal.
I'm highly confident, based on what I think I know about these activities, that it's already looking that way. Now, keep in mind, they have all the time in the world. They have 5 years.
Right.
So the FBI can pick this up in 3 years and do a year's worth of investigating and then make a decision. I think a lot of it has to do with political climate, manpower, whatever else is going on in the world. Who knows? They may decide that he just pays back his 16 plus a penalty of $10 million. They bar him forever, and if he's quiet and he moves away to Portugal, he might be safe. But if he runs out and hits it again and he tries to open up another fund or hit the internet big time in the next year or two, I think they might make him his project.
When do you turn yourself in?
October 9th.
36 months. It's so funny because I know in your mind that seems like forever, but that's not. It's
they've got the programs, right?
Yeah.
So I just plan on working the programs. And
did you get ARDAP?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so ARDAP. So you'll go right into ARDAP. The problem with ARDAP is people think that you're gonna. People think, I'll go into ARDAP, and I'll get I'll get time off, and I'll get more halfway house, and that. You'll go through, there's 3 phases. You'll go through the first 3 phases because the first 2 phases, they're just trying to, you got to think what they're dealing with. They're just trying to get you to eat with a fork and a spoon and say thank you and please, because that's what they're dealing with. And you're like, this is nothing. You'll sail through. Like, I'm polite to everybody. I could have dinner with Hitler and Stalin and be like, yeah, you guys did some damage, bro. What's up? I'm a nice, polite person to everybody. I'm not an asshole. So you're like, I'm going to sail through. The second one, you're like, I'm helping people. I've learned a lot. And that's great. And then the third one, you're like, this is a joke. I'm going to be done with this. And that's when they come for you. Because that's when they come for the educated, intellectually superior people. That's when everybody turns on you. The DTSs, everybody, because suddenly you're an arrogant, narcissistic prick who's not taking responsibility, who all the things that you're doing, and you're like, what are you talking about? I'm helping the other participants. I'm doing all the right. You're manipulating us. Oh, you think, and everything that you think you're doing that's correct becomes manipulation. And you're a con man, and trust me, it's the third. That's why I dropped out in the third phase every single time. Dropped out. Because that's the problem, is that everybody. Remember Dawsey? You should watch Dawsey's video. Dawsey's a black guy. He's got a scar on his face. Did real estate fraud, but I mean blatant 100% real estate fraud.
Yeah.
Great video. But we talk about ARDAP. Listen, the last 2 months of ARDAP for Dawsey, he is walking around the compound by himself. And I'm like, hey, Dawsey, how's it going? He's like, bro, it's bad. It's bad.
They're coming for me. I'm terrified to talk to anybody. Everything I say is getting twisted. And then you think, so he's trying to kind of stay away from the program and the people in the program.
Okay.
But if you do that, then you're not participating. We don't see you here anymore. Brian, what's going on? Why are you not participating? You're not being a part of the community. Do you feel you're better than us? Is that what's happening? You're like, what the fuck happened? I went to chow. I mean, I didn't do anything. I'm talking to these. I'm doing my job. You trust me. It's bad.
Are you talking about the other inmates or the counselors or the whoever's
All
above
of
you?
them.
All
They're
of them.
horrible. Horrible. I was lucky because I didn't need the year off. So I was able to behave like a complete menace. I was a maniac because I don't care if you fire me or kick me out or do whatever. So people were terrified of me. I'm saying insane stuff. There's something where you call people up in the group where you say, hey, I'd like to call up Mr. Baker. Could you please stand up? And you both stand up and like they have a morning meeting. Bro, I got a book. You got to read. I read a book called The Program about ARDAP. It's insane.
I didn't know that.
It's hilarious. You have to learn. Listen, this is going to be insanity for you, bro. I'm sorry. I mean, to me, you're gonna sail through and you're gonna think you're great and you're gonna think everybody likes you and everything. And then that last.
So there's 3 stages.
3 stages. First 2 are a joke for a civilized individual, but that last one, whoo! And everybody that works there, all the DTSs hate your guts already.
Sure.
Because just for some reason, you're a rich white male. Thank God you don't have blue eyes. Blonde hair, platinum. You know what I'm saying? Like they despise you.
Yeah.
But literally, like they call it pull up. That's what pull people up. So they have a morning meeting. So there'll be like 120 guys in this unit. So 60 people on one side and 60 on the other. And so what you're doing is you're calling people up. You say, Mr. Baker, could you please stand up? And I stand up. I'd like to call Mr. Baker up. And Colby stands up. And you say, Mr. Baker, I noticed yesterday that when you left the chow hall, you took 2 pieces of bread with you. You know we're not allowed to remove any item out of the chow hall. And I saw you take the bread. You're not taking, you feel that's super optimism. You'll learn all these terms. That's super
optimism.
Yeah, you feel you think you're better than everybody. You think you can
There's
get
super
away.
optimism in prison?
It's a real thing. It's super optimism. Super optimism. And then you start name off all the things he's struggling with and how he can fix it. And then 2 other inmates will stand up and they'll say the same thing. How do you need to work on it? And what's happening is Colby, if he doesn't respond correctly or if he's been pulled up too many times, he might get recycled or even kicked out of the program. That's a year for him.
Come on, Colby, do better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then you might get in trouble for pulling him up because maybe they'll say you're manipulating the situation and you're sitting there and these guys are going back and forth, round and round in front of the DTSs. It's like entertainment for them. And literally at some point, like I would be sitting there thinking, are we talking about bread? Is this guy about to lose a year? He might be kicked out of the program and not get that year off of his program because he took 2 pieces of bread because he's 240 pounds and he's overweight and he's hungry. He gets hungry about 8 o'clock at night. He has to go to bed. Like nobody sends him money. He doesn't have any commissary. He took 2 pieces of bread. Are you serious? Listen, I saw a guy get pulled up and get recycled because he borrowed salt from someone. You're not allowed to bring salt in. We don't have salt in the chow hall. He brought that salt in. You're only allowed to use what's in the salt. So do you feel you're better than him because you brought salt in and you used the salt? I'm like, this dude's about to lose a year of his.
And there's 60 people all doing this at the same time?
120. No,
120?
there's 120 watching, and you're standing there in front of them, and you're sitting there going, is this over salt? Is this guy's about to do another year for salt? Because he used some guy's
Is it really just
salt?
because they don't like the guy?
No, because so you
Or
kind
are they
of
shifting blame away from themselves? There
No,
must
no,
be another.
it's you're holding him accountable. You want to hold the other participants accountable. You want him to take the program serious. You want him to work on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not allowed to be using condiments. We're not supposed to be using condiments in the chow hall, and they don't provide them. And if for you to sneak that guy had to sneak that salt in, and then you use the salt. You know that's against the rules. And breaking small rules leads to breaking big ones. Do you think you're better than everyone else? Is that what's happening here? Listen, and you're in there brushing your teeth in the morning, and you have some guy walk up, and he's like, hey man, you need to turn the water off. Can I talk to you for a second, Mr. Cox? Yeah, what's up? You're brushing your teeth. You need to turn the water off because we need to conserve water. And it's like 99% of all water in Coleman is recycled. Okay, so I'm drinking your pee right now, by the way. I'm brushing my teeth with your piss, but it's all recycled. So I'm not really wasting anything. And I have a BA. I'm here for fraud charges, and you're a crackhead. Like on the street, you sold crack. You're a crackhead, and now I'm being told how to live my life by a guy who was selling crack to pregnant children or pregnant women. I know this because I'm in group with you, and I remember you talking about getting people's food stamps that were pregnant and selling them crack. So I'm not lying, and you're telling me I need to shut the water off while I brush my teeth. And if I don't shut the water off or I say anything like, go fuck yourself, you're going to pull me up tomorrow. So what I have to do is, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for correcting me, and you're terrified all the time. Now, I wasn't terrified, but that last
Maybe I'm not. Yeah.
That last 3 months, but you're lucky. You got 36 months. You're going to go right in the drug program. In 9 months, assuming you make it through, that last few months, you get the year off. They'll send you straight to a halfway house. You'll also program. Yeah, bro, you could be out of there in like a year.
Could be, but that means I have to get into ARDAP right away, and I don't think that happens a lot, does it?
No, but if you take a few people out, you got to send a couple guys in there to take some guys out.
Sounds like I need a crew.
Pull some. You get in good with a couple guys, knock a few guys out, make some. You got to
I like it.
You got to have to be
use
creative.
some of my commissary to get myself in.
Absolutely, sneak some commissary to some guys. Slip a note in saying so and so is betting at the tables or whatever. Just cause some havoc in the area, and they'll knock a couple guys out. Like
sponsor a gambling ring and then turn them all in.
Absolutely,
I'll knock out 4 or 5 people.
Absolutely, you're going to have to get creative. Yeah,
this is how you run a conspiracy.
It's good stuff. It's going to be an experience. You're going to be a better person for this.
I'll come back and tell you when I'm out.
Maybe.
Listen, I am gonna send you my ARDAP book. You're gonna die. You're gonna be like, this isn't real.
But yes. And I was actually in the ARDAP program when 2 people attacked one another.
I think I heard this story from you. Yeah.
A guy pulls up another
was
guy.
that an accountant guy or something?
Yes, he was there for tax fraud. Yeah, he pulled up a guy that was there for tax fraud. And he was a guy who was like a crypt or something, or a blood in Hawaii. He'd been to he beat like the state with 2 murder charges. And the guy with tax evasion guy pulls him up. You were seen smoking marijuana last night or whatever it was, in the bathroom. And this is the second time. And I feel you're suffering from, and the guy just lunged at him. And that never happens, by the way. But I was there when the one time it did happen, and it was just like chaos. Classic. The entertainment value is really
there. People watching.
Yeah, it should be a reality TV show.
Yeah,
it really should. You're gonna learn something. You're gonna have a new appreciation for life. I'll tell you that.
I bet.
You're gonna be around people that you've never been around.
So I was gonna ask you about FOIA requests. I tried to do a couple, and I'm not good at it apparently.
Boy, what do they say?
So I asked the SEC for some documentation, and they came back and they asked me like 2 separate emails asking me questions about what it was for and this and that. And finally, they just came back and said I need to narrow the scope because the amount of data equals 275 boxes.
Right.
So.
Well, and I'm surprised they didn't. In the end, they'll probably try and charge you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Well, if you're incarcerated and you do it, typically you can get away with not being charged because you're indigent. You can say I'm indigent.
Okay. But it takes like a year to get that stuff, you said, right?
It takes forever.
Yeah.
It takes forever. I don't know if it's shorter now or longer. But the problem is typically it's not that much data. You have a massive amount of data, I'm sure.
and they're not going to let you get all those. Well, actually, if you actually had a legal case going, they would have to accommodate you. But they'll tell you, like, if you were to get that information in prison, they would tell you, "Oh, we're not giving you this." So they'll do that a lot. We don't have to give you this. You don't have to. What are you talking about? Like, legally, that's my court documents. That's that you have to start going in on them, and then they're like, "Oh, well, fine, we'll do this." But you'd be shocked how many times that the staff in federal prison will just stare you straight in the face and blatantly lie to you. But yeah, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And it depends. Everybody's different. Like the Secret Service might get you stuff within a few months, and the FBI might take 2 years. SEC, you're saying what, a year or so? I don't think I've ever gotten anything or applied at the SEC. I'm not sure.
You try it out. It's fun.
Yeah, I don't have room for 22 boxes, and I don't want to read 22 boxes.
No, it's 270 boxes.
Yeah, come on.
It was an insane number.
It's outrageous.
Yeah.
In the end, what are you going to get anyway?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get conversations. There's all kinds of things you learn in the process, right?
The problem is that they'll go through that whole thing and they'll redact all the. So you have like FBI 302 forms and DEA 6s. And basically what they are all of those are like memorandums of conversations. You know, on this date we spoke with so-and-so and he said
it's like
this.
a summary of the conversation.
It's a summary, yeah.
Yeah,
it's a summary. But the problem is that they'll redact the hell out of it. And sometimes you can still look at it and you can go, okay, I know this had to be Brad, but I don't know what Brad said. But apparently he said a lot because there's 12 pages. So Brad had a lot to say, but it's heavily redacted. And there'll be a line here and a line there that mean nothing to you. And you'll go, okay.
So has that ever been useful to you?
It has been because somebody who said, man, I've never even talked to them. And then you get something that says, no, they clearly did talk to him because this is Susan. You know, I met Susan here. And it'll give you just enough to know, well, this is Tom, you know, but it doesn't really tell you what Tom said. Now, the state's different. The state will just tell you, they'll just put somebody's business out there. But the feds will heavily redact everything to the point where it's useless. You don't really know what was said. And you'd have to basically go back to the judge to say, hey, I need this unredacted and give an explanation of why. And then the government can always come back and say, oh, it's a fishing expedition. He doesn't know what he's looking for, blah, blah, blah. You know, it just drags out. And in the end, I don't know what you end up getting.
Yeah, may not be enough.
You know. But it may be worth, might be worth looking for. And a lot of it, that stuff.
I have a lot of free time on my hands.
Yeah. But a lot of that stuff would be repetitive. Like you'd be shocked how many times you'll see the same documents over and over. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 times. And you're like, well, no wonder there's 200 some odd boxes. Really, there should be 50 because a lot of this stuff is over and over and over and over again. But yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's but when I was writing, I mean, it was hugely entertaining. It was, you get to hear your name called for mail call, so you get to go do that. You get to pick it up and you get to read through it and throw out what's not. Get down to core information. And
you get junk mail in prison?
Very, very little.
You just throw out the stuff you didn't like.
Yeah, of course. But you might still get junk mail. You'll still get some junk mail, not a lot, but you might get some junk mail.
Okay.
Okay. You get books. You can get books mailed to you. That's it. You'd be shocked how many times I had people that try and like mail you a T-shirt or something, and you're like, bro, you can't mail me a T-shirt. Like you can't even mail me a book. Like you can order a book through Amazon, and the publisher has to mail it. Like if your wife said, "Oh, I just read this book. I'm going to mail it to you," you'll never see that book. It has to come from the publisher because she could write something in the book, or she could. You'll see these guys that will dip a corner of page 22 will be dipped in some kind of a chemical that you can roll up and smoke. And you'll see these guys smoking. Oh, listen, you haven't been around these people. You don't know. You don't know.
I'm sure the creativity will be amazing.
Yeah, it's insanity. and they'll smoke stuff that you're like, I can't. Why would you? That's not like it's marijuana. It's something that makes you think you're on fire. And these guys will strip their clothes off and go running around the compound naked, screaming.
Awesome. Can't wait. I've also heard there's drones. Drones drop stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, not when I was there, but yeah, if it's a camp, they'll have runners because there's so few guards to monitor the inmates. Someone will go and make a drop, and then there'll be a runner, and some guy will run to the spot, pick it up, and run back. And they'll pay him, and there'll be cell phones, and all kinds of stuff to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
So it's better to just read the Game of Thrones series, and get into a
War
good
and Peace.
get into a good book series, and
The Bible.
write out your time, and yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It's going to be entertaining. You got to look at it like an adventure.
Yeah, and anybody
Yeah.
you meet that's getting released soon, they have a good story.
Yeah.
Send them our way.
Yeah.
okay. We'll do it. We'll
Absolutely.
do it.
Slip them out.
The craziest guy.
That's what you need. Are you? Oh, you're in the. Well, really, wherever in the Florida area. Yeah.
One quick question just to clear something up.
Sure.
With the civil case, did we ever find out exactly why? I remember you said at the time you didn't know why they were bringing the civil case. Did investors lose money, or what exactly?
I think this falls under the gag order.
If it
Yeah.
does, that's fine. I just want to clear that up.
Based on what I gathered
Yeah.
was that they felt that the way they were marketing the funds and the different vehicles that they were using to get investors to invest was misleading. And so that's my opinion, is that they felt it was misleading. What bothers me about it is that nobody lost any money. Nobody complained. Nobody lost any money. But somebody somewhere in a competing organization or firm said, hey, these guys are getting people to invest in Nevada. Nevada, am I saying it right?
Arizona,
Nevada?
mostly.
Arizona,
Yeah.
and they're investing that money in Florida. So they put in some kind of a complaint to the SEC. The SEC looked at the marketing material and said, we feel the marketing material is misleading. They started an investigation. He ended up paying a fine because they came in and seized everything. So I can't fight it. So they put you at a disadvantage. He ends up paying a fine of $27 million. And in the meantime, that triggers an IRS investigation because now he can't pay his taxes because they seized the money. Like, what fucking? That kills me. It's like part of the reason some of these Ponzi schemes or different, not Ponzi because this isn't a Ponzi scheme, but part of the reason some of these schemes fail or things go wrong is because the government comes in and shuts down a company. And so, like, okay, there may have been $5 million in loss, but that was it. The government comes in, seizes the company, sells off everything, and now there's $20 million in loss. Mm-hmm. And so you get hit with the $20 million in loss. You're like, yeah, but there was only $5 million. I could have paid the $5 million back. No, now it's $20 million. Mm-hmm. So that's my understanding. But there was a gag order, and that's
perfect. That's perfect just to tie up any loose edges for anybody that might have gone over their head.
Yeah, I have all kinds of assumptions and guesses and some things I've learned over the last few years. But when you read, it's called the amended complaint, and the amended complaint, I don't know, is it 40 pages? Dude, bro, it covers so much stuff. And so, yeah, if I talk about any of it, it just triggers them, right? And the document that I signed explicitly says I can't confirm or I can't confirm or deny anything or speak to any of the charges. And the charges are like, a page. So it's just super dynamic. And that's part of my frustration is I wish I could tell people, hey, this is what I, theoretically did right. And this is what I theoretically did wrong. And by the way, these are the people that were helping me do it. Don't do this. Mm-hmm. It's wrecked my life. Right. Yeah. I mean, so.
But you can't speak on those things because of the gag order.
Correct.
Yeah. I just want to, I know you made it clear, but I want to kind of bring it up that way. There's
because there will be people in the I still don't understand what did this guy do wrong? I still don't understand. Right.
Unless they read the court documents, they're all on record, but they're really laborious and hard to read. Yeah.
Cool. When you're talking about the watches you had, you mentioned a lot of brand names. Can you explain like how you get access? Kind of what you're saying when we were on break, like you have to get on a waiting list. How much are these watches worth?
Yeah. So that's why I had so much money to pay back. Is because almost everything I touched during that time period, let's say 2015 to 20, had 10x'd in value. To a large degree, the whole portfolio did. So, like for example, the watches, if you're buying watches from a retailer, like let's say Patek Philippe or Audemars, you know, you're allowed to go in and buy entry-level watches. And entry-level watches for those types of people, and don't laugh too hard, is about $40,000. So you do
Peasants, for the peasants, for the little
for
people.
the beginners.
I
It's for the
understand.
beginners. So, but these are very nice entry-level watches, and they could be heirloom pieces all by themselves. And so, what I was doing is I was buying watches at the auction that kind of needed work. Like for example, I really enjoyed buying the original Royal Oaks. They only made a couple thousand of them in the early '70s, and this is the original steel sports watch, luxury watch. And so back in early 2000 teens, I was buying them up at auctions for like, let's say 20,000 or so. And the Audemars Piguet Service Center for all of North America happens to be right here in Tampa. So I was taking my watches in there and having them repaired. I would get them certified and get the little certificate and make them good. So you can't really, it's not a great idea, just like a car. You don't want to over restore it, right? But you do it just enough that it's usable and in good shape. And so then I would take that, I'd sit on it for about a year, and then you send it up to a major auction house like Sotheby's, Christie's, or somebody like that, and you sell it on the market whenever you think it's going to go for a good price. And so I made a lot of money that way, just doing that little process. But it takes some time, and I enjoy it. It's fun to sit with a watchmaker after he takes it apart and tells you, all the parts original, and when do you think's the last time it was serviced, and what it would take to make it functional but not over polished, and that kind of stuff. And then it's fun to take it to market. You take it up to Christie's or Sotheby's, you show them all the work you've done to it, and they kind of have a market price idea, and sometimes it goes for higher and sometimes it goes for lower, so it's fun. Yeah, for example, if you can buy a brand new Patek Philippe Nautilus that's Tiffany stamped, that's a watch that retail is about $45,000, and you pay $5,000 in tax. You take that watch and you can resell it on the open market for, several $100,000, and you've done nothing. All you've done is just buy a watch at a retail store and sell it on the open market. Same thing with the ones I was repairing, those Royal Oaks, those vintage watches. You'd buy it for maybe $20, it'd take maybe $8,000 to repair it, and it would sell for $120.
How has the last 5 years been for you, like socially, with the civil case and then the criminal? Like, how does
Oh yeah, how do you
as
have
a
friends?
white collar, upper class, or wealthy individual, like how does your community, how does that go? Like, do you see people distancing themselves, people backing you, or a little bit of both, or just how has that been in the last 5 years?
Overall, everybody walks away.
You can talk to
Oh,
Matt
sorry
for
about
the
that.
Matt. You're good.
Overall, it's not. None of it's even remotely acceptable. If you're a business guy and the government comes out and uses any words that equal the word Ponzi, it's basically a pedophile.
Yeah.
In the middle class business world. So, yeah, I have a handful of people that I'm still close with. I think 5 to be exact. And I'm very grateful for them. But everyone else, they have to distance themselves. And it really comes in different layers. Like
They have to,
well,
or
let
they
me-
just do.
Let me explain. So when you're accused of these things, on a social level, you have to distance because you don't want to be seen as been doing business with that guy or associated or like on a social level, right? And then there's a very pragmatic situation where I was invested in several small businesses, breweries, et cetera, and other projects in and around Florida. And all of those people, best I can tell, got interviewed by the FBI. So my closest people that I was with all got pulled into it at some level, their time, their energy. They had to hire attorneys, I'm sure. So yeah, it's there. It's a complete reboot of who you are. You know what I mean? Like it's a complete hard reboot. And then there's also the other social aspect. Like for example, when the press releases came out, my daughter was bullied in school. People said things to her, and it was, it's very, very painful to know that, your activity is affecting your kids like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
You realize right away what assholes people are.
yeah. It it's challenging for sure. Yep. But there's also, like I said, there's people that have been wonderful. Like my family's been wonderful. they've been behind me 100%. And like I said, I've got those 5 people that I think are solid, and I'm sure their lives were turned upside down, and they had to hire attorneys for a while to deal with fallout from being my friend. So they still talk to me. So, yeah.
And what is your mindset or game plan going into, the next 3 years? Is there something that you want to get out of your time away, or like what's your...
I really don't think it'll be 3 years.
Well,
I think it'll be
okay,
a year.
yeah.
Even if it's 2 years, it's not even going to be 2 years.
Yeah,
but even
just-
if it was 2
just your
years,
mental space, or like what's your approach? Like what are you thinking as far as
So
for yourself?
I really appreciate that question. I got to tell you. So
Colby's much more thought provoking than I am.
yeah, so I've really spent a lot of time, in my 20s, I just loved being out in the world and the blind ambition of building Brian Davison and doing whatever I wanted to do in business and so forth. And then when 2006, 7, 8 came around, that was a hard reset, right? So I got to rebuild myself again in like business life. And I built myself, I thought, safer and stronger. I wanted to build a big real estate fund with no debt. You know what I mean? Like, so I would always have assets and I couldn't be hurt, blah, blah, blah. So now, the last few years, I've really focused on being a middle-aged guy. I really dove into the podcasts and reading. It started with like stoicism, not to sound too basic and cheesy, but it starts there, and then you end up at Alan Watts, and then you spend 6 months listening to everything Ram Dass ever said, and then you end up at Deepak Chopra, and then you end up, just going through the list, right? And it has been good for me because, and I put this on my personal website, my little meanderings about just trying to discover who I really am if I'm not part of the system, right? If I'm not part of, because you really kind of get kicked out of the system when you get a white collar criminal, right?
Yeah.
Or anybody, I guess, right? You're sucked into the criminal system, and you're kicked out of the other system. So, and for me, I was in limbo land for these last 5 years, and you just have a lot of time to sit and think. Do I want to go build another business and be that guy again? Do I want to move to another country and start over somewhere else? I don't have to live in America. My kids are pretty much grown now. I can be anywhere. I got friends all over the world. So, I don't know. So you have a lot of time to think about those things. I'm not really sure what the path is. Quite frankly, when it comes to prison, I do plan on just keeping to myself and just using the time to kind of detox from the phone and just keep reading philosophy and just find out what I'm going to do the last 40 years of my life. Yeah. I think about that a lot. That's like the number one thing I think about all day long.
It'll be good. It'll be good. Listen, honestly, if I wasn't married, I wouldn't care about if you said, "Hey, Matt, you're going to go. You can leave right now and go spend 6 months at the low and step right back into your life." I'd be like, "Let's go. I'm ready to go."
You wouldn't mind it at all?
I wouldn't care at all.
Okay.
That's how bad. That's what I'm saying. It's just not that. But for you, you have a wife and kid.
Mm-hmm.
That to you is the torment.
Yeah.
Being there will not be a big deal.
Right.
It's the torment that my family's out there.
Yeah.
That's what's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And so, that, like I said, that's the worst part. And I used to always say that, is that, like, thank God I don't really have anybody out there.
For sure. Yeah.
That I didn't have a wife and kids, because those are the guys that have it the hardest. Is anybody who's got a wife and kid that's out there. You're just going through hell because you want to get back to them so bad.
Yeah.
Other than that, you'll be fine. You'll be you'll
Well,
listen, and you're going to get in great shape. You'll walk the track. You're going to come out the best. You're going to come out like
shining example of a
like
middle-aged man.
Yeah, I'm serious. You're going to be like, yeah. There's no cheating. There's no cheating on extra. Oh, I'm gonna go in the middle of the night and go eat some. Go in the fridge and eat some food, or I'm gonna get some cookies. There's none of that. That's over, bro. You'll come out of there. You'll be like, never looked this fucking good in my entire life. I got abs. Yeah, I looked amazing. I got out. I was $150.
Really?
I'm 180 right now, and I'm struggling. That I took the Ozempic
I could lose
thing.
30 pounds.
I did that whole thing. That was bullshit. That off. I got down to 170. Shot right back up to what you got to keep taking it. I'm not taking that forever. People are going blind. Yeah, I'm just horrible. I'll never see 150 again.
So you need the low.
I do need yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I could step out and step right back into my problem is if I went to the low, I'd lose everything I have right now. You know, that's the problem. Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, if you want to check out Brian's links, we're going to leave his links in the description box. You can click on there. You're going to be able to go and check out his website, socials, and we're also hoping at some point we're going to have an Amazon book link in there for his book. So once again, thank you so much. Please consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month, and it really does help Colby and I make these videos. See ya.